Chapter 4371. It's absolutely true. This disciple doesn't dare to lie at all, Qin Deli hurriedly said. The three leaders looked at each other. The relationship between the Morning Star Academy and the Hong Chamber of Commerce had always been good. Now that the Crepe branch had suddenly met with such a change, and it was related to a disciple of the Academy, it was only right for them to ask about it. Who is it? Ling Yuanqing's face darkened as he asked. Although the Morning Star Academy encouraged their disciples to compete and never forbade them from causing trouble, but if the other party was the Hong Merchant Guild that they had a good relationship with, then it would be a little unreasonable. Yes. Qin Deli pretended to hesitate and stole a glance at the divine Nun of the East Sea's expression. What are you waiting for? Hurry up and say it. Ling Yuanqing frowned. It's Wang Xinyan and Huang Xiaotao, Qin Deli said through gritted teeth. With that, Ling Yuanqing and Wei Hebei could not help but look at the divine Nun of the East Sea. They immediately fell silent. Since it was a matter between Wang Xinyan and Huang Xiaotao, they obviously had to let the divine Nun of the East Sea decide herself. This was the most basic form of respect. The divine Nun of the East Sea was taken aback. She recalled that Wang Xinyan and Huang Xiaotao had indeed returned rather late last night, but they were not angry at all. She immediately said, I'll only know what happened after I hear it from Yan and Xiaotao themselves. A moment later, Wang Xinyan and Huang Xiaotao appeared in front of the crowd and greeted the three heavyweights one by one. They smiled after hearing Qin Deli's speech. Master, martial uncles, the two of us did indeed go to the Hong Merchant Guild with Ling Yi last night, and we did capture Wei Xiaodong. The two women looked at each other and replied unhurriedly. Is there really such a thing? Ling Yuanqing and Wei Hebei raised their eyebrows. From what they remembered, the two of them were obedient girls who never caused trouble. Why would they suddenly do something like this? The divine Nun of the Eastern Sea was also a little surprised. Qin Deli, who was watching from the side, couldn't help but feel pleased with himself. It seemed that he had made the right decision to come here. As long as the divine Nun of the Eastern Sea didn't protect Wang Xinyan and Huang Xiaotao, then she wouldn't help an outsider like Ling Yi. However, what the divine Nun of the East Sea said next was, it almost made Qin Deli spit out a mouthful of blood. Both of you are not hurt, right? Why didn't you tell your master about this kind of thing? What if something happened to you? What should we do then? The divine Nun of the Eastern Sea pulled the two women over and asked in concern. Qin Deli was dumbfounded on the spot. He had not had much contact with the divine Nun of the Eastern Sea in the past. How could he know that this so-called monk was actually a person who would protect her children to the core? No. Wei Xiaodong and the other two were guest practitioners. Wouldn't it be embarrassing for you if they could get hurt like that? Xinyan smiled, and Huang Xiaotao nodded in agreement. That's good. You can go out and train. However, you have to be careful. If it really doesn't work out, ask me to stand up for you. Don't force yourself, all right? The divine Nun of the Eastern Sea warned. We know. We won't make you worry, Master. The two girls hugged the divine Nun of the East Sea's arms and smiled. Qin Deli's face turned green when he saw this scene. He could only turn to Ling Yuanqing for help. He hoped that the dean could stand out and uphold justice. Otherwise, not only would he not be able to salvage the situation today, he would probably get off lightly with a scolding. My two nieces, why did you go to the Hong Merchant Guild last night? Can you tell us? Ling Yuanqing was the dean after all. Even if he had no intentions of punishing the two girls, he had to understand the situation at the very least, just in case something happened in the future and they were forced into a passive position. The divine Nun of the Eastern Sea glanced at him and nodded at Wang Xinyan and Huang Xiaotao. She nodded at Wang Xinyan and Huang Xiaotao. Although she was their master and wouldn't let them suffer any losses, she still had to explain the specifics of the matter to everyone. Reporting to Martial Uncle, the two of us went to the Hong Chamber of Commerce last night to get rid of Wei Xiaodong, the cunning, treacherous, and evildoer. He had once set up a trap to harm the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency. Not only did he collude with pirates to rob his own goods, but he also brought them back to Hongdali. Not only did he collude with pirates to steal his goods, he even forced the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency to pay 300,000 spiritual jade. Wang Xinyan explained, Oh, something like that actually happened? The three mountain opening powerhouses could not help but be rather shocked. They all had some understanding of Wei Xiaodong, but they did not know he was actually so cunning and shameless. As the manager of a branch of the Hong Merchant Guild, he actually colluded with pirates to steal his own goods and blackmail the Heaven's Equal escort agency. Something like that was truly unheard of. Deans, there's a misunderstanding here. Qin Deli hurriedly explained. Back then, the Heaven's Equal escort agency did indeed use this excuse to spread the news. They even brought people to the Hong Merchant Guild, but the truth proved that they did not have any credible evidence. They don't have any credible evidence. All of this is just something they fabricated out of thin air to cover up the fact that they didn't do a good job in protecting the escorts and restore the agency's image. Are you saying that we distorted the truth and deliberately framed Wei Xiaodong? Wang Xinyan and Huang Xiaotao sneered at Qin Deli. Qin Deli, you've got some guts to speak ill of my disciple right in front of this old lady? Eh? The divine nun of the East Sea's gaze was also hostile. She had never liked Qin Deli. Yet this guy actually dared to say that Wang Xinyan and Huang Xiaotao framed Wei Xiaodong. Was he not looking to die? A mountainous pressure immediately descended on Qin Deli's head. With a plop, Qin Deli was forced to kneel on the spot. He immediately became extremely terrified, and his eyes almost began to bleed. The same situation had already happened at the Heaven's Equal escort agency last night, except that the one who died back then was Cheng Ketian. Now, it was his turn. Ling Yuanqing and Wei Haobei looked at one another, but they ignored this. In their eyes, although Qin Deli was also a purchasing officer, he was just a nobody, and he had no self-awareness at all. They had yet to settle the score with him for lying about the military yesterday, yet he had come to provoke the divine nun of the East Sea on his own today. What did he take the mountain-opening powerhouses for? Even if an ant like him died, he would die for nothing. They would not even glance at him. Qin Deli could not help but piss his pants in fright. If he were given a chance to start over, he would never dare to come in and snitch on them even if he fled to the ends of the world. At that moment, he was tempted to slap himself in the face. He had really been kicked in the head by a donkey. He actually thought that the three powerhouses would believe him. Now, he had failed to turn the situation around, and he had lost his life instead. He really could not cry even if he wanted to. Qin Deli completely believed that he was about to follow in Cheng Ketian's footsteps. He had already lost all hope, but after a while, he discovered that the pressure above his head did not grow any heavier. His body only spat out blood in a horrible shape. It had not reached the point where he would die on the spot. Chapter 4372. The divine nun of the Eastern Sea was not a murderous demon after all. She had only killed Cheng Ketian last night because he had insulted her and threatened Huang Xiaotao. As her disciple, she naturally had to stand up for her disciple. However, today's matter had not reached the point where she needed to kill. Spare me, headmaster of the Eastern Sea. I didn't say anything bad about the two ladies. I just felt that they might have been deceived, used. Qin Deli was quick-witted and hurriedly seized the last chance to explain. Hearing this, the killing intent on the divine nun of the Eastern Sea dissipated. In her heart, Wang Xinyan and Huang Xiaotao were not unreasonable people, but it was not impossible to say that they had been deceived and used. You're slandering me. Huang Xiaotao immediately panicked. This guy purposely said that the two of them had been used. He clearly wanted to turn the spearhead to Lin Yi. He really did not give up. That's right. You purposely tried to drive a wedge between us and Sister Xiaotao Sr. What are your intentions? Wang Xinyan questioned coldly. No, it's not that. Please calm down. The world is dangerous. You may know a person's face, but not his heart. That Ling Yi clearly knew that you were the direct disciples of Headmaster of the Eastern Sea Academy, but he still purposely brought you to the Hong Merchant Group. Anyone with a discerning eye would know that he was using the two of you. Qin Deli said earnestly. Using the tiger's skin as a flag, he clearly wanted to use the two of you to tie the Morningstar Academy to the Hong Merchant Group. As soon as he said this, the expressions of the three leaders changed slightly. From an outsider's point of view, this matter could indeed be interpreted in such a way. It was impossible for a single person to go against the Hong Chamber of Commerce. Ling Yi might really have such an intention by dragging Wang Xinyan and Huang Xiaotao along. Qin Deli was very observant and knew that his words had an effect. He hurriedly struck while the iron was hot and continued. No matter who was right or wrong in the matter between the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency and the Hong Merchant Group, our Morning Star Academy has no need or reason to interfere. Furthermore, that Ling Yi used the excuse of investigating Wei Xiaodong. I would like to ask, where did a small escort like him get the right to do so? In the end, he was just avenging a personal grudge, yet he still used flowery words to deceive and use the two ladies. Such despicable people deserve to die. The three leaders nodded slightly. What Wei Xiaodong said made sense. Even if there was something wrong with Wei Xiaodong, it was up to the Hong Chamber of Commerce to deal with it. It was not up to an unrelated escort to come knocking on their door in the middle of the night to capture him. Humph, who said that Ling Yi isn't qualified? Wang Xinyan glared at Qin Deli and said coldly, he is the honorary vice president of the Hong Chamber of Commerce. Wei Xiaodong offended the higher-ups of his family. Shouldn't he clean up the family? Honorary vice guild leader? The three big shots all had a look of surprise on their faces. The honorary vice president of the Hong Chamber of Commerce, no matter where he went, he could not be considered a small figure. That Ling Yi looked ordinary and didn't reveal anything. They didn't expect him to have such an identity. That's just what he calls himself. If he's really the honorary vice president, how could he be a lowly escort in the Equal of Heaven Escort Agency? Qin Deli hurriedly questioned. Several months ago, my senior brother and I were on the Northern Island. We even had a meal and chatted with the new vice president of the Hong Chamber of Commerce, Hong Zhong. Vice President Hong confirmed this to me in person. Are you trying to say that even I'm lying? Huang Xiaotao said coldly. This? Qin Deli immediately choked. He obviously wanted to say that, but when he sneaked a glance at the divine Nun of the East Sea's expression, he could only force it back down. Doubting an outsider like Ling Yi was fine, but if he doubted Huang Xiaotao as well, then he would really be looking to die. Ling Yuanqing and Wei Hebei looked at the divine Nun of the East Sea at the same time. Up to this point, there was no point in arguing any further. They could only wait for the divine Nun of the East Sea to make the decision herself. I believe my disciple won't lie, the divine Nun of the East Sea said indifferently. Believing Huang Xiaotao was obviously equivalent to believing Ling Yi. No one was surprised by this. She had always been a protective person. Between an outsider like Qin Deli and her own direct disciple, it was obvious who to choose. There was no suspense at all. Thank you, Master. Wang Xinyan and Huang Xiaotao hugged the divine Nun of the East Sea happily, one on the left and one on the right. Qin Deli's face was ashen. He was so gloomy that he almost coughed up blood again. He said rather reluctantly, but, is there something else? The divine Nun of the East Sea did not give him the opportunity to speak at all. She directly interrupted him. Why are you so nosy? Are you nosy, mother? You're the one complaining every time, and now you're even trying to accuse my disciple of lying. Do you not want to be a purchasing manager anymore? Or do you not want to stay in the academy anymore? No, no, no. I'm fine now. I'll be taking my leave. Qin Deli scrambled out of fright, hurriedly fleeing for his life from the room. The divine Nun of the East Sea was a major figure in the mountain establishment realm. She was definitely in existence who meant what she said. If he really angered her, not only would he lose his job, but he would even lose his life. Serves him right. Looking at Qin Deli's sorry figure, Wang Xinyan and Huang Xiaotao looked at each other and smiled. This crafty person was quite good at quibbling. It was a pity that in front of their master-disciple relationship with the divine Nun of the East Sea, he was simply asking for humiliation. He deserved it. The Morning Star Academy held the selection ceremony as scheduled, and the focus of the entire Weiwan city shifted to the selection ceremony. The discussions about the Hong Chamber of Commerce in the streets became much quieter, and with less attention from the outside world, there were naturally fewer disturbances. The entire Hong Merchant Group also gradually returned to normal under Honest Chai's management. Everyone was no longer in fear and trepidation, and they gradually began to accept reality. The era of Wei Xiaodong had already passed, and the Velvet City branch was about to welcome a new beginning. In these few days, aside from having people keep a close eye on Wei Xiaodong, Lin Yi did not idle around. Right now was the crucial period of investigating Wei Xiaodong. Apart from Honest Chai's account book, how much more decisive evidence could be found would depend on the harvest during this period of time. Under Honest Chai's hard work, the harvest in these few days was not small. Seeing Wei Xiaodong's shameless and flawless business being dug out by Honest Chai, Lin Yi was overjoyed, but at the same time, he could not help but sigh in admiration. Honest Chai was truly a talent. At least when it came to business management, auditing, and bookkeeping, this fellow could be said to be a true expert. In comparison, Wei Xiaodong's entry-level bookkeeping methods were simply child's play in front of him. Very quickly, Honest Chai found the whereabouts of the 300,000 spiritual jades that the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency had compensated. Lin Yi immediately sent someone to inform Qi Wenhan. Chapter 4373. Greetings, Brother Ling. No, President Ling. After not seeing each other for a few days, Qi Wenhan's attitude towards Lin Yi was much more respectful than before. He no longer dared to be as casual and natural as before. This was not surprising. If Lin Yi was just a genius, then he could still call him a brother. But it was different now. News of the incident at the Hong Merchant Guild had spread everywhere, and Qi Wenhan naturally knew about it. He had never thought that Lin Yi would be the honorary vice president of the Hong Merchant Guild. The Hong Chamber of Commerce was one of the top chambers of commerce on the entire Heavenly Tier Island. Any one of its honorary vice presidents was an incredible figure. Although Qi Wenhan was the young master of the Equal of Heaven Escort Agency, he still knew his own limits. The Hong Chamber of Commerce wasn't someone he could afford to associate with. Therefore, even though he knew what had happened to the Hong Merchant Guild, Qi Wenhan did not dare to come looking for Lin Yi. Not only that, he was afraid that if he came looking for Lin Yi, he would be misunderstood by Lin Yi as asking for the 300,000 spirit jades. If that happened, he would not be able to explain himself. But now that Lin Yi had taken the initiative to look for him, it was naturally a different matter. President Ling? Lin Yi could not help but be taken aback. He immediately punched Qi Wenhan and laughed. Brother Qi, why are you treating me like an outsider? Are you not going to recognize me as a friend? No, how could that be? As long as Brother Ling recognizes me, I, Qi Wenhan, will be your friend for life. Qi Wenhan could not help but laugh. Their statuses were too different. He had thought that Lin Yi was just pretending to be polite. Now that their statuses were out in the open, there was naturally no need to pretend anymore. However, Lin Yi's attitude made him breathe a sigh of relief. Their statuses were different, but at least their relationship had not changed. They could still continue to be friends. That's good. I don't have many friends to begin with, and there are even fewer who are as congenial as you, Brother Qi. If you don't recognize me, I will regret it for a while. Lin Yi patted Qi Wenhan's shoulder and laughed heartily. If I miss a friend like Brother Ling, I will regret it for the rest of my life. Qi Wenhan also laughed heartily, and the strange barrier between them immediately disappeared. So, there's no need for such formalities between us. Since we're friends, why are you treating me like an outsider? Lin Yi smiled and said, this time, I called you over for no other reason than to retrieve the 300,000 spirit jades that you gave to Wei Xiaodong previously. Now, we are returning them to their rightful owner. I've already asked Vice Shopkeeper Chai to prepare everything. You just need to hand it over to him. Really? Qi Wenhan was overjoyed. Although the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency was a prominent force in the Verdant Arc territorial waters, it was absolutely insignificant when compared to the entire Heaven Step Island. 300,000 spirit jades was no small sum for the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency. They had scrounged together for a long time before finally managing to scrape together enough spirit jades. It was not an exaggeration at all. Qi Wenhan had already accepted the reality and was prepared to empty his own pockets and grit his teeth to endure this difficult period of time. Now, they could actually recover what they had lost. Ho, do you think I'd lie to you? Lin Yi smiled and called Honest Chai over. Bring Brother Qi to hand over the items. Then I'll go first. Qi Wenhan cupped his hands at Lin Yi in excitement. He hurriedly followed Honest Chai to hand over the items. In less than the time it took to brew a cup of tea, Chi Wen-han returned. His face was filled with joy. He thanked Lin Yi profusely. Brother Ling, you've really helped the escort agency this time. On behalf of the entire Heaven's Equal Escort Agency, I thank you for your great kindness. You're too kind. It's only right for me to return the items to their rightful owners. There's no need to be so courteous. Lin Yi smiled. To be honest, I still feel like I'm dreaming. I can't thank you enough for your kindness. Brother Ling, I won't say anything else. The Heaven's Equal Escort Agency will never forget your kindness. Chi Wen-han said solemnly. All right, what's the point of saying these things between friends? If you're not busy, sit down and have a cup of tea with me. Lin Yi smiled and poured a cup for Chi Wen-han. It was all top-grade spiritual tea that he found in Wei Xiaodong's room. It would be a waste not to drink it, so it was a good thing for the two of them. All right. Chi Wen-han nodded repeatedly. At times like this, unless it was a matter of life and death, he would not bother with the matters of the escort agency. What could be more important than drinking tea with Lin Yi? Oh right, how's the agency these few days? Did anything happen? Lin Yi asked as he sipped on the spiritual tea. Not really. Everything is normal. Brother Ling, if you're free, why don't you come back to the agency and let me treat you to some good tea? Chi Wen-han smiled. He originally wanted to ask for Lin Yi's help to participate in the Southern Continent's Escort Agency Festival, but now he was too embarrassed to mention it. Lin Yi was the honorary vice president of the Hong Chamber of Commerce. If he still wanted him to continue being an escort for his agency, he would be too shameless. Be a guest? Then forget it. Lin Yi pursed his lips. These words shocked Chi Wen-han, and he could not help but feel embarrassed. He did not know what to do. But then, Lin Yi said, no matter what, I'm still an escort in name. It's only right for me to visit the agency. How can you say I'm going to be a guest? Hey, Brother Ling, you scared me. I thought you looked down on our little equal heaven escort agency. Chi Wen-han laughed. As the two of them were talking and laughing, a young worker suddenly ran in from the door. He looked at Lin Yi anxiously, as if he had something to report. But seeing that Chi Wen-han was also there, he hesitated. Brother Ling, why don't I leave for a while? Chi Wen-han asked. No need. Brother Chi is not an outsider. If you have something to say it in person. Lin Yi stopped him. Yes, Vice President. Something big just happened outside. The Poison Eye Mercenary Group has announced that from today onwards, they have formed a strategic alliance with the Dragon Boat Escort Agency. From now on, both sides will advance and retreat together. The worker reported. What? Before Lin Yi could speak, Chi Wen-han had already cried out in shock. His face was full of anxiety. What's wrong? Lin Yi could not help but feel a little strange. He naturally knew about the Poison Eye Mercenary Group. After all, he had dealt with them many times. But this Dragon Boat Escort Agency, he had never heard of it. Brother Ling, you may not know this, but this Dragon Boat Escort Agency is the second largest escort agency in the Wayark territorial waters. Their strength and status are only below our Equal Heaven Escort Agency. I did not expect them to ally with the Poison Eye Mercenary Group. Even now, Chi Wen-han had not recovered from his shock. He still found it hard to believe. One is the second largest escort agency in the area, and the other is the Poison Eye Mercenary Group. For them to ally with each other at this time, I'm afraid they are up to no good. Lin Yi also frowned. Chapter 4374. During this period of time, apart from being busy with the Hong Chamber of Commerce's affairs, he had also specially transferred 2 men from Weiwan City to keep an eye on the Poison Eye Mercenary Group's every move, just in case. After all, Chung Katian was dead. He was the young master of the Poison Eye Mercenaries. Although Cheng Haonan wouldn't dare to seek revenge against the divine nun of the Eastern Sea, he had died in the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency. Coupled with the past grievances between the two, it was hard to say if he wouldn't seek revenge against the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency. Lin Yi had people keep an eye on the Poison Eye Mercenaries so that he could know their movements in advance. That way, he could respond quickly. He didn't expect Cheng Haonan to cooperate with the Dragon Boat Agency instead of the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency. Brother Ling is right. They are not friendly. The Heavens Equal Escort Agency has always upheld the principle of being kind to others in the Weiwan territorial waters. After all, one more friend means one more path, and one more enemy means one more wall. However, we have two enemies that we've been suppressing all these years. They are the Poison Eye Mercenaries and the Dragon Boat Agency. Chi Wenhan nodded. Brother Chi, can you guess their intentions for joining forces now? Linny asked. The South Continent Escort Agency Festival is about to begin. If I'm not mistaken, they are joining forces to push the Heavens Equal Escort Agency out of the 5 major escort agencies. Chi Wenhan did not treat Lin Yi as an outsider and analyzed everything in detail. The Heavens Equal Escort Agency was one of the top 5 escort agencies in the South Continent. Even though it was ranked last, it was still the largest in the Verdant Arc territorial waters. However, the Dragon Boat Escort Agency was unwilling to be left out. Now that they had suddenly made such a move, it was obvious that they wanted to take over. So, this South Continent Escort Agency Festival will have to be handled carefully. He wasn't sure what the Dragon Boat Escort Agency's style was, but the Poison Eye Mercenaries were definitely up to no good. They were using this opportunity to take revenge on the Heavens Equal Escort Agency. Who knew what sort of dirty tricks they'd come up with? Brother Ling, this is a serious matter. I must go back and make arrangements. I can't stay. Please forgive me. Chi Wenhan was restless and couldn't continue drinking tea with Lin Yi. He immediately stood up and said goodbye. Okay, I'll go back and take a look when I have time. I won't keep you here today. Lin Yi immediately stood up to send him off. After sending off Chi Wenhan, who had a heavy heart, he turned to the shop assistant and asked, I asked you to inquire about Wu Baoyang and Lu Bianren. Is there any news? He didn't just send people to keep an eye on the Poison Eye Mercenary Group. At the same time, he was also inquiring about Wu Baoyang and Lu Bianren. Although he had already asked Chi Wenhan for help, one more way meant one more possibility. Not yet. The waiter shook his head. All right, you can leave now. Lin Yi waved his hand. This kind of thing couldn't be rushed. Even the Heavens Equal Escort Agency's network of contacts had not yielded any news after such a long time. It was obvious that it was not easy to find them. At this time, Honest Chai walked over with a letter in his hand. He passed it to Lin Yi excitedly. Vice President Hong's letter has arrived. Oh? So fast? Lin Yi was taken aback. The distance from the South Island to the North Island was more than 10,000 miles. In addition, Hong Zhong's reaction time after receiving the letter, even if it was just a simple communication back and forth, he still hadn't gone to the Middle Island to negotiate with the higher-ups of the headquarters. It shouldn't be so fast, right? It had only been a few days? Hee, you might not know this, but our Hong Merchant Association has a specialized teleportation channel. Although it isn't like those high-grade teleportation channels that can transport people together, it's not a problem to transport some important resources. We usually use this channel to send messages, so we don't need to rely on flying spirit beasts. It's not just our Hong Merchant Association. Other top forces also have such channels, but ordinary forces don't have them. Honest Chai explained with a smile. I see. Lin Yi nodded in realization. Any teleportation channel was a strategic resource, even if it was just a simple material transport channel. It was like a treasure ship, a symbol of top forces. Ordinary forces shouldn't even think about using it. However, even if the time needed to send a letter was saved, the fact that Hong Zhong could respond so quickly showed that he was very concerned about this matter. Honest Chai waited impatiently by the side. Lin Yi smiled. He knew that Honest Chai was anxious to know the result. At this moment, he definitely wasn't in the mood to do anything else, so he opened the letter and read through it. In the letter, Hong Zhong's first sentence was an apology. Although Wei Xiaodong only started to change in recent years, with Hong Zhong's eyesight, he couldn't help but say that he had eyes but failed to see for making such a mistake. He actually almost introduced this scum to Lin Yi as a friend. It was fortunate that Lin Yi didn't use Hong Zhong's name to befriend Wei Xiaodong. Otherwise, with Wei Xiaodong's wily style, he would definitely not let him know about these matters. Even now, he might still be in the dark and still think that Wei Xiaodong was a kind and honest person. Hong Zhong's attitude in the letter, on the other hand, made Lin Yi quite happy. He approved of everything Lin Yi did against Wei Xiaodong with both hands and feet. This was actually very rare. After all, he had never been to the Weiqian territorial waters. Everything he knew, including the evidence in the account book, was actually just Lin Yi's side of the story. On one side, it was Lin Yi whom he had just met, and on the other side, it was his old friend of many years. If it was someone else, they would probably have a hard time deciding. But for Hong Zhong to express his stance so clearly, other than being a reasonable person, it also showed his unreserved trust in Lin Yi. How is it? Honest Chai was a little impatient and asked cautiously. The Hong Merchant Guild's decision on how to deal with Wei Xiaodong would directly determine his future, especially if they couldn't deal with Wei Xiaodong this time. When Wei Xiaodong recovered, he might not dare to do anything to the honorary vice president Lin Yi, but dealing with a mere Honest Chai was more than enough. At that time, the consequences would be unimaginable, and he might not even be able to keep his life. I can't say. Lin Yi shook his head helplessly. Honest Chai's heart instantly fell into an ice cellar, and his hands and feet instantly turned cold. He was originally a cowardly and honest person. This time, he stood out to testify against Wei Xiaodong because he was forced to do so. Since things had already reached this point, he could only walk down the dark path with no room for regret. If he couldn't suppress Wei Xiaodong to death this time, then he would really be finished. Hong Zhong said in the letter that this time's matter is rather troublesome. There are people from the Middle Island headquarters who are trying to protect Wei Xiaodong. He has already used his position as the honorary vice president and my position as the honorary vice president to put pressure on the headquarters, but there is no way to punish Wei Xiaodong. Lin Yi smiled bitterly. Chapter 4375. What should I do? Honest Chai almost fainted from fear. His face was deathly pale, without a trace of blood. Don't worry, too, we might not be able to punish Wei Xiaodong this time, but there's no way he'll be able to stay in the branch anymore. He's not much of a threat to you. Lin Yi comforted. Really? Honest Chai hurriedly asked. It's true, Hong Zhong has already said that the worst-case scenario is for Wei Xiaodong to be recalled back to the Central Island headquarters and become an ordinary manager. However, he still has to personally make a trip to the Central Island headquarters to punish Wei Xiaodong. As for whether or not he will succeed, we'll only know when the time comes. Lin Yi nodded. Recalled back to the Central Island to become a manager? Honest Chai finally let out a long sigh and said with lingering fear, That's fine. If he continues to stay here as a shopkeeper, I really won't be able to live. Haha, you don't have to worry about this. Not to mention Wei Xiaodong being recalled back to the Central Island. Even if he stays here, he won't be able to touch a single hair on your head. After all, we're here. Moreover, Hong Zhong has to personally go to the Central Island headquarters. The final outcome is still unknown. What I said earlier was only the worst-case scenario. Lin Yi smiled as he patted Honest Chai's shoulder. Oh, that's good, that's good. Honest Chai was afraid that he would be thrown to the side by Lin Yi and Hong Zhong if this matter was left unsettled. After hearing that, he finally felt more at ease. You can relax. Hong Zhong isn't an ordinary character that can be easily fooled. No matter how strong Wei Xiaodong's backing is, this matter won't be left unsettled. Lin Yi smiled. Even though Hong Zhong didn't say it clearly in the letter, he could more or less guess the other party's intentions. Hong Zhong's trip to the Central Island headquarters this time was to negotiate with the higher-ups of the headquarters. Either he wanted to punish Wei Xiaodong, or he wanted the higher-ups to make concessions in other areas. Otherwise, the higher-ups would have to make concessions in other areas. It might not be completely satisfactory, but it would have to be one of the two. Lin Yi immediately wrote back to Hong Zhong. There were only 2 sentences in the letter. First, there was no problem on his side and everything was up to Hong Zhong. Second, the Y-Arc branch's deputy manager, Honest Chai, could be used. With the tacit understanding between them, Lin Yi believed that these 2 sentences were enough for Hong Zhong to understand his meaning. No matter what, Honest Chai was a useful talent, and he didn't have any background. Now that Hong Zhong was in need of manpower, there was no harm in taking him under his wing. As for how to deal with Wei Xiaodong, according to Lin Yi's temperament, he would naturally eliminate all evil, this kind of heartless scum. It would be best to kill him with a single blow. However, He could understand Hong Zhong's helplessness. After all, he was a member of the Hong Chamber of Commerce, and he had a backer in the Middle Island headquarters. He wasn't someone who could be killed as he pleased. Since Hong Zhong had come forward to take over this matter, no matter what the result was, Lin Yi would not say anything and return the favor. Hong Zhong trusted him unreservedly, and he naturally trusted Hong Zhong 100% as well. Moreover, he was only the honorary deputy chairman of the Hong Chamber of Commerce. He had neither the authority nor the obligation to deal with Wei Xiaodong. Furthermore, there was no personal enmity between them. This time, he had acted purely because he could not stand such a shameless person. As for how the Hong Chamber of Commerce would be dealt with in the end, Lin Yi could not and did not want to care. After getting Honest Chai to send out the letter, Lin Yi spent the next 2 days talking and chatting with Wang Xinyan and Huang Xiaotao. The Morning Star Academy's selection in the Y-Arc waters had been going on for a few days, and it was almost over. There was not much time left for him to spend with the two ladies. Lin Yi planned to accompany the two ladies until they left. After all, they would be thousands of miles apart in the future. He didn't know how long it would be before he could be with them again. However, there was an interlude in the middle. Housekeeper Song of the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency had arrived. Young Hero Ling, can I invite you to our Heaven's Equal Escort Agency? Everyone in the agency is looking forward to seeing you. Do you have the time? Housekeeper Song asked with a smile and cupped his hands. Housekeeper Song, I'm a nominal escort of the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency. I can just ask someone to send a message. Why do you need to invite me personally? Housekeeper Song asked with a smile. In terms of strength, this Housekeeper Song was the number 2 person in the agency. In terms of status, he was not below the young master, Qi Wanhan. For such a person to personally invite him, it was already a very serious matter. Young Hero Ling, you're exaggerating. With your status and the favor you've done for the agency, it should at least be the young master. It's already impolite of me to come personally. Housekeeper Song smiled apologetically. However, the head escort has returned today, and the young master can't leave at the moment. So, I can only invite you on his behalf. Please forgive me if I've been impolite. You're too kind. Housekeeper Song, I really can't accept your words. Since that's the case, let's go. Lin Yi agreed readily. Since the head escort had returned and specially invited him at this critical juncture, it was obvious that he wanted him to meet this head escort. It just so happened that Wang Xinyan and Huang Xiaotao were accompanying their master at this time, and there was nothing important at the Hong Chamber of Commerce. Lin Yi happened to be free, so it was not a bad idea to make a trip to the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency and meet this head escort whom he had heard of for a long time but had never met before. That's great. This way, please. Housekeeper Song was overjoyed. He hurriedly sent someone back to the agency to report the news, while he accompanied Lin Yi back. He even purposely stayed a step behind to show his respect. Lin Yi was not only the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency's great benefactor, but also the honorary vice president of the Hong Chamber of Commerce. Furthermore, he had a close relationship with the direct disciple of the divine Nun of the Eastern Sea. Such a person was no small matter where he was placed. Normal people would not be able to invite him at all. Even though he was the head housekeeper of the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency, Lin Yi had agreed so readily. After passing through a few streets and alleys, the two of them arrived at the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency. At this moment, the entire agency was decorated with lanterns and streamers. There were layers of people inside and outside the agency, and every single one of them had a joyous expression on their faces. It was a rare scene of a festive occasion. Lin Yi could not help but feel rather surprised when he saw this. Wasn't it just the return of the head escort? It's not like he was an outsider. Was there a need for such a grand celebration? However, it could be seen from the faces of the escorts that their joy came from the bottom of their hearts. They weren't forced smiles to add to the crowd. It was clear that this chief escort, whom they had never met before, was definitely not a simple character. This was what the hearts of the people truly yearned for. At least on this point, Qi Wenhan was still very far away from his old man. Chapter 4376. Young Hero Ling, please wait a moment. Housekeeper Song said as he quickly walked into the escort agency. A moment later, a large group of people came out, led by a burly man. He was tall and sturdy, and his entire body exuded a fierce and domineering aura. It could be said that he did not have to be angry to have an awe-inspiring presence. Accompanying this burly man were the young master, Chi Won-han, and Housekeeper Song. Without a doubt, this burly man was the head of the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency, Chi Won-han's father, Chief Escort Chi Mingyuan. Ha 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 ha, young hero Ling, I've long heard of your name. It's a pity that I've always been busy, or else I would have flown back long ago to thank you in person. On behalf of the entire escort agency, I, Chi Mingyuan, thank you, young hero Ling, for your great kindness. I will never dare to forget it. Chi Mingyuan cupped his fists and walked over with a hearty laugh. Seeing this, Lin Yi could not help but praise him in his heart. Although this man seemed crude and boorish, there was a natural forthrightness in his actions. Even a stranger he had never met was able to close the distance between them in an instant. It was not a coincidence that the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency was able to become one of the top 5 escort agencies in the South Continent. There was a reason for this. Greetings, Chief Escort Chi. You're too kind. I've heard a lot about you, Chief Escort Chi. Today, my wish has been fulfilled. Lin Yi immediately responded with a smile. At the same time, he greeted Chi Wen-han, who was beside him. Brother Chi, it's been a few days since we last met. How have you been? How have you been? Father has returned today, so I took the liberty to invite Brother Ling over. I hope I didn't delay your official business. Chi Wen-han apologized. I'm just an idler. What business do I have? Besides, Chief Escort Chi has returned. As a nominal escort of the agency, even if Brother Chi didn't invite me, I would still have come to join in the fun. Lin Yi smiled as he shook his head. Haha, young hero Ling is a straightforward person, just to my liking. If it weren't for the fact that you and Wen-han are of the same generation, I would want to become sworn brothers with you. Chi Mingyuan teased from the side. Everyone in the audience also followed and laughed loudly. It was a scene of joy and peace. When Lin Yi heard this, he didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Chi Wen-han's father was a wonderful person. He seemed rough and forthright, but he didn't seem out of place. Not only did he not feel the slightest constraint when interacting with him, but he was also relaxed and happy, which was very rare. By the way, I've specially invited young hero Ling over today. I have an important matter to announce to everyone in the escort agency. Chi Mingyuan suddenly announced to the crowd in a clear voice. Everyone instantly quietened down and waited for him to continue. He then continued, as the head of the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency, I hereby announce that from today onwards, young hero Ling will forever be the honorary head of the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency. The crowd burst into an uproar as soon as these words were spoken. In the entire Heaven's Equal Escort Agency, aside from Chi Mingyuan, the chief escort agency, there were only a handful of escorts who could become an escort leader. Any escort leader was the absolute core of the agency, and their status and treatment were far superior to that of ordinary escorts. As for the one that Chi Mingyuan had promised to Lin Yi, although the word honorary had been added in front, it was still more powerful than the actual power of an escort leader. To a greater extent, it was actually a halo of status. Even so, it still caused everyone in the audience to be green with envy. This was because this not only represented the high status in the agency. At the same time, it also meant that if Lin Yi needed it, he could mobilize the power of the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency at any time and place. The power he wielded was not to be underestimated. How can this be? Lin Yi was also a little shocked. This was different from the honorary professorship in the secular world's universities. It was not just a mere title. If they really wanted to use this as an excuse, there was a huge profit to be made. To the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency, this was an undeniably heavy gift. Young hero Ling, listen to me. Don't be in a hurry to reject me. Chi Mingyuan smiled as he explained. I'm not doing this because I want to tie you down or do anything. With your strength and status, I know that this is unrealistic. I'm doing this purely to express the agency's gratitude to you. This time, the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency was able to regain its reputation and recoup its losses. This is all because of your strength alone. Giving you only the title of honorary head of escort agency for such a great favor is already considered very lenient. That's right. This is our sincerity, and it was not a spur-of-the-moment decision. It was a decision that my father made after careful consideration. Brother Ling, don't reject it. Qi Wenhan, who was standing at the side, also tried to persuade him. Then, all right, it would be impolite for me to refuse. Seeing this, Lin Yi could only nod. After all, the title of honorary escort agency leader was only a title in name. He did not need to stay in the Heavens Equal Escort Agency forever, so it did not matter to him. After all, he already had the title of honorary vice president of the Hong Chamber of Commerce. Now that he had the title of honorary escort agency leader, it did not matter much. Haha, that's great. Young Hero Ling is indeed a straightforward person. This is how it should be. Qi Mingyuan, Qi Wenhan, and the others immediately looked delighted. They crowded around Lin Yi enthusiastically and said, "Come, please come in. The banquet is ready. Let's have a good meal." The crowd entered the banquet hall and gave way to Lin Yi. Qi Mingyuan and Qi Wenhan, the father and son, personally accompanied him on both sides. On the dining table, there were all kinds of priceless delicacies. A rough estimate was that this table of dishes alone would cost at least 1,000 spirit jades. Hee, as the saying goes, the tongue is short of the mouth. Chief Escort Agency Leader Qi, it seems that this time, I have no choice but to participate in the South Continent's Escort Agency gathering. Lin Yi could not help but laugh. This is all up to young Hero Ling. If it's convenient for you to help us, we would naturally be more than happy. But if it's not convenient, that's fine too. We can all understand. Young Hero Ling, please don't worry about this kind of thing. Otherwise, we will really feel sorry for you, Qi Mingyuan said with a serious expression. He was speaking from the bottom of his heart, and he knew that forcing Lin Yi to come out wasn't going to make him use his full strength. Just making Lin Yi feel uncomfortable wasn't worth it, and it wasn't worth it if they forced Lin Yi to come out. Not to mention how much of his strength Lin Yi was willing to use when the time came. It wasn't worth it. Yes, Brother Ling, there's one more thing I want to tell you. There's some progress on the matter you asked us to find out, Qi Wenhan said from the side. Oh. Lin Yi raised his eyebrows and his eyes immediately lit up. How is it? This person, Wu Baoyang, is indeed still in the Wei Arc territorial waters. And as far as I know, ever since he came here, he has never left. He has always been staying in Wei Arc City, Qi Wenhan said. Chapter 4377. In the beginning, we also investigated in this direction. We wanted to start with the missing girls, but after investigating for so long, we found that there weren't many missing girls in the Sea of Verdant Arc recently. It wasn't until this coincidental opportunity that we realized we had made a mistake. Qi Wenhan shook his head and smiled bitterly. Mistake? What do you mean? Lin Yi was a little surprised. A leopard couldn't change its spots, especially since Wu Baoyang was an evil cultivator. His cultivation method meant that he couldn't turn over a new leaf unless he stopped cultivating. Brother Ling, do you know that Changhaonan and Changketian also cultivate a harvesting technique? Qi Wenhan asked. Of course. Lin Yi nodded. The first person he and Huang Xiaodao saw when they arrived at the Sea of Verdant Arc was Changketian, and this guy tried to steal Huang Xiaodao. It would be strange if he could forget this. In truth, the father and son pair did not cultivate this kind of harvesting cultivation method a few years ago. It was only after a military advisor came to the Poison Eye mercenary group that the father and son pair began to cultivate this cultivation method. This cultivation method is of the same origin as the evil cultivation method that Brother Ling mentioned that specializes in poisoning women. At that time, I was still puzzled. Why did the father and son pair suddenly start to cultivate this kind of evil cultivation method? Only now do I know that their harvesting technique was taught by the new military advisor, Qi Wenhan explained. So, the new military advisor of the Poison Eye mercenary band is? Lin Yi's heart moved. Yes, it is the Wu Baoyang that Brother Ling is looking for. Qi Wenhan nodded heavily and said, not long after this person arrived in the Verdant Arc Sea, he became acquainted with the Cheng father and son. Moreover, He has been holed up in the Poison Eye mercenary group, living in seclusion. His actions are extremely secretive, and he rarely shows himself outside. Therefore, very few people know about him. Most people wouldn't pay much attention to him if they saw him. If that's the case, if he doesn't poison a lot of women, how does he continue to cultivate his evil technique? Linny asked curiously. I've asked my informant to find out. I don't know the exact reason, but ever since Wu Baoyang joined the Poison Eye mercenary group, he often spent time with the Qing father and son. According to my speculation, the three of them should be studying the mental cultivation method. They should have improved the mental cultivation method, so they don't kill so many first ladies like before. As Qi Wenhan spoke, he revealed a piece of information. Wu Baoyang's position in the Poison Eye mercenary group is very high. The women he usually uses for cultivation are actually shared with the Qing father and son, so it's very difficult for outsiders to notice. Puff. Linny almost burst out laughing when he heard this. The Qing father and son were really outrageous. They played with an outsider like Wu Baoyang all day long. Were they not afraid of getting sick? I see. But since his whereabouts are so secretive, how did you find out? Linny asked. If it wasn't for the cooperation between the Poison Eye mercenary group and the Dragon Boat escort agency, we might not be able to find Wu Baoyang even after another year of investigation. Qi Wenhan laughed. Oh? What do you mean? Linny was a little puzzled. The announcement of cooperation was one thing, but the two parties couldn't possibly announce the names of all the people, unless there was something wrong with their brains. The reason is very simple. The Dragon Boat Escort Agency also wants to participate in the South Continent Escort Agency Grand Event. According to the rules of the event, all the escort agencies that register to participate must provide a list of participating escorts. We are on the list provided by the Dragon Boat Escort Agency. We found a new name. It's the Wu Baoyang that Brother Ling is looking for. Qi Wenhan laughed. No wonder. Linny finally understood. This made sense. At this critical juncture, the Dragon Boat Escort Agency suddenly merged with the Poison Eye mercenary group. It must be to prepare for the South Continent Escort Agency Grand Event. Transferring experts from the Poison Eye mercenary group to participate in the event was a matter of course. As the military advisor of the Poison Eye mercenary group, it was only natural that Wu Baoyang was included. This was good. If Wu Baoyang had been hiding in the Poison Eye mercenary group, even if they knew about him, Lin Yi couldn't do anything to him. After all, it was impossible for him to charge into the Poison Eye mercenary group alone and kill him. With Lin Yi's current strength, it would be impossible for him to succeed. However, since Wu Baoyang was determined to participate in the South Continent Escort Agency Grand Event, it was a good opportunity. As long as Lin Yi also participated, it would be justifiable to kill him. Moreover, he could also help the Heavens Equal Escort Agency. It was killing two birds with one stone. It seems that even Wu Baoyang is asking me to participate in the South Continent Escort Agency Grand Event. If I don't go, it won't be right. Linny couldn't help but laugh. Haha, it's great that young Hero Ling is willing to help us. We can't thank you enough. Moreover, we're all on the same side, so let's not waste words. Come, pour it all into the wine. Qi Mingyuan and Qi Wenhan looked at each other and smiled. They raised their cups at the same time to show their gratitude. Haha, in your eyes, I'm helping the escort agency, but in my eyes, it's actually the agency that gave me a chance to openly deal with Wu Baoyang. It's a mutually beneficial thing, so there's no need to thank me. Linny smiled and immediately raised his cup to drink. Great. Qi Mingyuan and Qi Wenhan also drank to the end. Steward Song and the others around them also drank with them and cheered loudly. By the way, Brother Qi, have you heard anything about my senior brother Liu Bianren? Lin Yi turned to ask. There's no news about this. After all, there are too few characteristics. Brother Ling, your senior brother Liu must be a low-key person and won't appear in public. Even if he does, he won't attract attention. So, until now, I haven't heard anything valuable. Qi Wenhan shook his head and then said, But Brother Ling, don't worry. I've already spread the news. In the future, as long as your senior brother Liu appears, we should be able to get wind of it. You can just wait for the news with peace of mind. Well, that's all I can do for now. Although Linny was a little worried about Lu Bianren, it was useless to be impatient when it came to finding someone, so he could only put it aside for now. This banquet could be said to be a happy occasion for both the guests and the host. Whether it was Qi Wenhan, who was already familiar with him, or Qi Mingyuan, who was meeting for the first time, the father and son were compatible with Lin Yi. They didn't need to pretend to deal with each other, nor did they feel awkward or speechless. It was a very natural interaction between friends, happy and harmonious. Chapter 4378. What's wrong? Seeing Honest Chai's anxious expression, Lin Yi thought that something had happened. Vice Chairman Hong has sent a letter along with the headquarters resolution. Please take a look. Honest Chai could not hide his nervousness as he handed the two sealed letters to Lin Yi. These two letters not only determined Wei Xiaodong's fate, but also Honest Chai's. No wonder he was so nervous. Really? So fast? Lin Yi was slightly shocked. He did not notice it before, but this trip to the Verdant Arc territorial waters gave him a deep understanding of the Hong Merchant Association's efficiency. It was indeed worthy of being the second-ranked merchant association in Heaven Stage Island. Such efficiency was not something an ordinary faction could compare to. Lin Yi took the two letters from Honest Chai. In fact, they were talking about the same matter. Just as Hong Zhong had said in his previous letter, the upper echelons of the Hong Merchant Association had decided to recall Wei Xiaodong back to Middle Island as an ordinary manager. The punishment for Wei Xiaodong remains unchanged. It seems like the backer behind him really values him to this extent. Lin Yi could not help but sneer. How could this be? Honest Chai's face turned pale as he stood there in a daze. He did not know if it was fear or regret. His mind was blank, and he did not know what to do. Wei Xiaodong was only an ordinary manager in name when he returned to Middle Island. Whether it was status or authority, he was much weaker than the branch's vice manager. However, the other party had a backer behind him. If he really wanted to deal with Honest Chai, wouldn't it be a matter of a few words? Seeing Honest Chai's apocalyptic reaction, Lin Yi could not help but smile. This guy was indeed an expert in the management of a merchant association. He was a rare talent, but he could not change his cowardly nature. If he did not have a powerful backer behind him, he would not be able to make a name for himself in this lifetime. Other than the decision on Wei Xiaodong, there is another matter regarding you. Lin Yi's expression was unfathomable as he kept Honest Chai in suspense. Honest Chai was shocked and almost fell to the ground. He stuttered in fear. What does it say? Yes, it says here. I'm afraid you won't be able to keep your position as the branch's vice manager. Lin Yi furrowed his brows slightly, causing Honest Chai's eyes to darken, and he almost fainted. Lin Yi smiled and continued. From the day the headquarters sends the resolution, the vice shopkeeper Honest Chai will be appointed as the new shopkeeper. Branch manager? You want me to be the branch manager? Honest Chai was completely dumbfounded, followed by ecstasy. From hell to heaven, this great sorrow and joy came too suddenly. After being the vice shopkeeper of the branch for so many years, Honest Chai didn't have any thoughts of being promoted. That was definitely deceiving himself and others. However, he also knew that with his own connections and abilities, it was no different from a lunatic's ravings. Even in his dreams, he was secretly thinking about it. This time, he was forced to step forward to testify against Wei Xiaodong and was unable to kill him with a single blow. At first, he thought that he was going to be unlucky. It would be lucky if he could keep his life. But who would have thought that the position of branch manager would fall right on top of his head? This was not just a pie falling from the sky. It was a King mountain of gold falling from the sky. Not bad. With your abilities, you are more than qualified to be a branch manager. Don't let down Hong Zhong's trust in you in the future. Lin Yi hinted with a smile. The matter was clear. Hong Zhong personally went to the headquarters on Middle Island and had a face-to-face exchange with the higher-ups. Although he wasn't able to severely punish Wei Xiaodong, he definitely didn't return empty-handed. The branch manager position that fell on Honest Chai's head was obtained after contending with the higher-ups from the headquarters. Yes. I will do my best to live up to your and Vice Chairman Hong's appreciation and promotion. Honest Chai hurriedly swore to the heavens and couldn't contain his excitement. That did it say where I'm going? It said, it's here. Linny glanced at him. But according to the Hong Chamber of Commerce's rules, isn't it a promotion at a different location? Honest Chai was momentarily stunned. At the branch manager level, no matter who it was, they had to strictly abide by the rules of a different location. This was a dead rule set by the founder, no matter how powerful one's background was. It's different. Your situation is special, so special circumstances can only be handled according to special circumstances. Only you know the situation of the Y branch best. If you leave now, the branch manager and vice manager will be new. Not to mention controlling the overall situation, they might not even be able to clear up the accounts. Who knows, they might even mess up the Y branch. Even the headquarters can't take such a huge risk. Linny smiled as he shook his head. Both branches were branch managers, but letting Honest Chai be promoted and letting him lead another branch would have a completely different effect. Honest Chai's cowardly personality was already set in stone. Once he was transferred to another branch, it would be difficult for him to control the situation. There was a high possibility that his subordinates would take over his position. A branch manager would only be a figurehead in name. But the Y branch was different. He had been operating here for so many years and knew everything like the back of his hand. Especially after the incident with Wei Xiaodong, and with Lin Yi's help, the reputation he had built up during this period was enough for him to control the overall situation. That's true. The situation in the sea here is very chaotic and complicated. Adding on Wei Xiaodong's matter, it's hard for outsiders to get started without at least a year or so. Honest Chai nodded and heaved a sigh of relief. Being promoted to branch manager was already the best outcome for him. If not, he would really be so worried that he wouldn't be able to sleep. All right, bring this resolution from the headquarters back for everyone to see. Whatever happens in the Y branch in the future will be in your hands. I still have things to do here at the security agency, so I won't be going over for a while, Linny said. Yes, I promise I won't let you down. Honest Chai received the resolution from the headquarters and left in high spirits. Ever since he became a branch manager, his temperament had clearly changed. At least, he didn't look as timid as before. Although it wasn't obvious, there was already a bit of an aura around him. Linny looked at Honest Chai's back and nodded his head. He hoped that this guy could take charge and at least hold the Y branch firmly in his hands. Otherwise, Hong Zhong's efforts to fight for him would be wasted. The reason why Lin Yi stayed at the Equal Heaven Escort Agency was because the South Continent Escort Agency Grand Conference was about to begin. If you like this work, you are welcome to vote for it. Your support is my greatest motivation. Please search for Piao Tian Literature. Chapter 4379. Since he had promised Qi Mingyuan and Qi Wenhan, Lin Yi naturally would not go back on his word. Even if it was to take the opportunity to deal with Wu Baoyang, he had to help them. However, before leaving, Lin Yi had a small gathering with Wang Xinyan and Huang Xiaotao. This was the last time they would meet. On the morning of the second day after they reluctantly parted ways, the Morning Star Academy's large ship slowly left the Crepe Arc Pier under the watchful eyes of the crowd. From now on, the three of them would go their separate ways. If Lin Yi wanted to meet the two girls again, he would have to wait for God knows how long. However, if everything went smoothly and his strength increased quickly enough, it was still possible. After the people from the Morning Star Academy left, the bustling Crepe Arc City returned to its usual rhythm. Although it was still chaotic, at least there were not as many people in the streets and alleys. Compared to before, it was much calmer. The Crepe Arc Pier was finally reopened. In the midst of the hustle and bustle, a mighty ship set sail amidst the shouts of the crowd. On the flagship, 4 large black gold words fluttered in the wind. Heaven's Equal Escort Agency. The majestic ship was far from being comparable to the Morning Star Academy's large ship, but compared to the other ships at the pier, it was already considered a giant. It was not strictly a treasure ship, but it already had the basic functions of a treasure ship. It was rare to see one in the Crepe Arc Pier. It was a display of the strength and foundation of the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency, one of the 5 major escort agencies in the South Continent. The South Continent Escort Agency's grand gathering was not held in the Crepe Arc Pier, but on the other side of the South Continent, 1,000 miles away from the dark cold sea. As one of the 5 major escort agencies, the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency was a step ahead of the other escort agencies. According to the rules, each of the 5 major escort agencies had to send one person to act as a judge and form a judging team. This was the privilege that came with the status in the Jianghu. However, even if they could send a judge, it was impossible to cheat under the watchful eyes of the crowd. After all, there were people from the other 4 escort agencies restraining each other. None of them could control the event as they pleased. The existence of a judging team, at most, it could only guarantee that his family wouldn't suffer a loss. As for the rest, it was only honor. There weren't many substantial benefits. It would take at least 5 days to travel from the Verdant Arc territorial waters to the Cold Devil territorial waters by sea. However, with the flag of the Equal of Heaven Escort Agency hanging there and a group of experts in full force, the journey was smooth. No matter how blind the pirates were, they would have to retreat at this moment. Otherwise, they would really run into the muzzle of a gun. They only cared about killing, not burying. Along the way, Lin Yi and the people of the Equal of Heaven Escort Agency arrived at the Devil Cold territorial waters. They entered a high-class inn in the city and were accommodated by Steward Song. The others didn't have anything to do for the time being, but Qi Mingyuan, the chief escort, went to work as soon as he got off the ship. Nominally, it was for each of the 5 major escort agencies to send out a judge. They could send anyone they wanted, but in reality, the judging panel was actually made up of the brains of the 5 major escort agencies. This was an unwritten rule throughout the years. Most people didn't even have the right to speak up when they went. Only their respective head escorts could attend the judging panel. Qi Mingyuan needed to be busy, but Qi Wenhan, the young master, didn't have anything to do. Steward Song had made arrangements for the people in the escort agency. He only needed to wait for the event to begin. Similarly, Linny had nothing to do. The two hit it off and immediately went out for a stroll. During this period of time, Lin Yi's Golden Core realm had been completely consolidated. After all, compared to others, it was easier for an expert of the Golden Core realm to achieve a perfect breakthrough. Moreover, with Lin Yi's aptitude, how could it be calculated with common sense? However, any breakthrough required an opportunity. Lin Yi had only consolidated his Golden Core realm in the Golden Core realm. If he wanted to go to the next level, he still needed some time. Therefore, he might as well go out with Qi Wenhan to relax and stroll around Devilong City. Walking on the main street of Devilong City, Lin Yi found that it was obviously much more orderly than Weiwan City. Among the few seas in the South Continent that Lin Yi had been to, Weiwan City was chaotic. Zhenduan City was even more chaotic, but only Devilong City was peaceful. Everything seemed to be normal and orderly, almost no different from the North Island. He didn't know if this place was like this, or if it was because of the South Continent Escort Agency event that someone was deliberately maintaining order. In short, walking down the street, Lin Yi didn't see any fights or trouble. If it was Weiwan City, he would have seen 4 or 5 fights or even more. Hey, there are a lot of people over there. Brotherling, let's go over and have a look. Qi Wenhan suddenly pointed to a chamber of commerce. Compared to other shops on the other streets, this chamber of commerce was obviously very popular. It was crowded up and down, and the degree of business was astonishing. The Central Chamber of Commerce? Lin Yi looked at the signboard and was stunned. The Central Chamber of Commerce gave people the feeling that it had risen rapidly overnight. It was so fast that even the top chambers of commerce on Heaven Level Island, such as 5 Elements Commerce and Hong Chamber of Commerce, were greatly impacted and threatened. He didn't expect that it would also exist in the Devilong Sea. Yes, I've heard people talking about it recently, but I've never come to see it. Since I happened to see it this time, I'll have to take a look, Qi Wenhan said with some excitement. Okay, then let's go in and have a look. Lin Yi nodded. He was also very interested in this Central Chamber of Commerce, especially the various kinds of goods sold in the secular world. If he could successfully find out the secret of this, he might be able to freely travel between Heaven Level Island and the secular world. This temptation was not small. The two of them immediately followed the crowd and walked inside. Sounds of people clicking their tongues could be heard from time to time. Looking at the various goods on the display shelves, Qi Wenhan was very curious. But Lin Yi was a little disappointed. Just like how the Central Chamber of Commerce made its name, the goods on the display shelves were some common things in the secular world. From common technological products to some practical tools, there was even food unique to the secular world. Lin Yi was a little absent-minded and felt that he had returned to the secular world. This was simply a department store. Of course, in the secular world, this could only be considered a very ordinary department store. It was far from those large-scale supermarkets. But even so, besides being disappointed, Lin Yi was also quite surprised. After all, this was Heaven Level Island. This kind of department store could be seen everywhere in the secular world, but to bring so many goods to Heaven Level Island, the meaning of this was really not small. If you like this work, you are welcome to vote for it. Your support is my greatest motivation. Please search for floating astronomy literature. Chapter 4380. Like everyone else, Qi Wenhan was very interested in all of these new things that the secular world had brought up. He walked left and right in high spirits. Lin Yi, on the other hand, followed behind him with a helpless expression. A dignified mid-stage golden elixir expert was actually shopping in the secular world's department stores on this heavenly island. Just thinking about it made one drunk. What made one even more speechless was that these common goods that could be found everywhere in the secular world could be sold for a sky-high price. Moreover, there were so many people fighting to buy them. The business was so good that it was unreasonable. Lin Yi made a rough estimate. Just by following Qi Wenhan around, the turnover had already reached the scale of tens of thousands of spiritual jades. It was almost comparable to the income of his Tiandan Pavilion in an entire day. One had to know that in Tiandan Pavilion, he was selling top-grade elixirs. In the end, they could not even compare to these secular department stores in the Central Chamber of Commerce. Such a result really made one not know whether to laugh or cry. In terms of actual value, any top-grade elixir from Tiandan Pavilion was enough to buy an entire street of secular department stores. It could only be said that the rarer something was, the greater its value. This old saying was really true. Lin Yi and Qi Wenhan chatted as they shopped. Although the latter showed great interest in these secular department stores, it was basically out of curiosity. There were very few things that could really catch his eye. As the young master of the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency, Qi Wenhan had received elite training from a young age. He was a typical example of this. These people did not lack the heroic spirit to spend a lot of money, but at the same time, they had extraordinary self-control. If he randomly saw a new thing and was tempted to spend money like dirt, no matter how rich his family's wealth was, there would come a time when it would be squandered. If that happened, Qi Wenhan would not be an elite, but a pure prodigal son. Qi Mingyuan would not be at ease to hand over such a large Heaven's Equal Escort Agency to him. Novelty was novelty, but these things were obviously just for fun. However, there wasn't much practical value in it. Qi Wenhan was just looking at it for novelty. If he really bought it, it could only mean one thing. He was out of his mind. Anyone with the slightest bit of ambition would not spend a large amount of spiritual jades on some playthings. Instead of spending money on these useless things, it would be better to buy some treasures related to cultivation, whether it was pills or weapons. Any one of them was much more practical than these secular goods. The two of them strolled around the first floor. After sighing in admiration, they turned around and went to the second floor. However, compared to the bustling first floor, the second floor was obviously much more deserted. Lin Yi looked around and found that the second floor did not sell the signature secular department stores of the Central Chamber of Commerce. Instead, it sold a variety of natural treasures and rare elixirs. Hee. Lin Yi couldn't help but laugh. Things that are used to attract people's attention are selling so well, but the real good things are actually not being sold. That's right. It seems that this Central Chamber of Commerce is quite ambitious. Qi Wenhan was also a sensible person. He nodded in agreement. The Central Chamber of Commerce's strategy was very clear. They would use the secular department stores to create a huge gimmick and public opinion to attract everyone over. However, it was not willing to do so. Natural treasures were the main products of the large chambers of commerce, and they were also on this heavenly island. The most marketable items could be popular for a while by relying on novelty, but it could not be so popular forever. Anyone with a discerning eye could see this. Naturally, the Central Chamber of Commerce also knew this. Therefore, it had to quickly transform into a mainstream top chamber of commerce while the secular department stores were still able to attract attention and even become a true giant. Although there weren't many people buying these natural treasures for the time being, the Central Chamber of Commerce had to make up for it. Not only did it have to make up for it, but it also had to make it better than the other chambers of commerce. Only then could it truly stand firm and prosper in the long run. What surprised Linny was that he actually saw quite a few rare natural treasures on the second floor. Even the Hong Chamber of Commerce rarely saw them. It could be seen that although the Central Chamber of Commerce had risen overnight, its foundation was incomparably deep. Ordinary chambers of commerce could not compare at all. No matter how it developed in the future, if it continued like this, it would definitely be able to occupy a place on the heavenly island. It might not be the number one, but it would definitely be among the top 3 without a doubt. This Central Chamber of Commerce is really aggressive and full of ambition. Linny smiled noncommittally. His gaze swept back and forth between the extremely rare natural treasures, but he had no intention of buying them. Although these things were rare, they were not like the star ink milk or the 10,000 crossing golden core fruit, which could be used by everyone. Their uses were relatively simple. If it wasn't for some special circumstances, not only would they not be used for the time being, they might not even be used in the future. Lin Yi was only slightly interested. However, when Qi Wenhan, who was beside him, saw these things, his eyes immediately lit up. As the young master of the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency, his experience was not something that an ordinary person could compare to. Of course, he could tell what the truly good things were. "Waiter, bring this sky snow vine down for me to take a look." Qi Wenhan immediately extended his hand and beckoned a waiter over. He pointed at one of the items with great enthusiasm. He would not buy the common goods on the first floor, but if this was a truly good item, he would not hesitate to spend more spirit jades. Linny smiled and strolled around by himself. He had originally wanted to wait for Qi Wenhan, but seeing that he was chatting enthusiastically with the waiter, he did not disturb him. He turned around and walked to the third floor. Compared to the bustling first floor, there were already very few people on the second floor. However, the third floor was practically empty. Linny was a little surprised as he sized up the place. He realized that there were no display racks, but rather luxurious and elegant private rooms. It seemed like a place for people to chat and rest. Those clients who did large business should be discussing with the Central Chamber of Commerce's manager in this place. However, why was there not a single person here? Wasn't business booming downstairs? One could not blame Linny for guessing this way. Any normal person would have the same thought. After all, everything the Chamber of Commerce did was to trade with people. However, what Linny did not expect was that this Central Chamber of Commerce was a little different from the other large chambers of commerce that he had seen before. Although the second floor was deserted, there were at least some customers. However, there was not a single customer on the third floor. There was only one reason for this. This place was not open to the public. No one was allowed to enter without permission. Normally, the entrance to the staircase was guarded. Moreover, those who frequented the Central Chamber of Commerce all knew this rule. Normally, they would not gather here, let alone go up to the third floor without permission. However, in the past few days, because the South Continent Escort Agency Grand Assembly was about to be held here, it had attracted a large number of outsiders. As a result, the already bustling Central Chamber of Commerce's business became even more lively. Floating astronomy. Chapter 4381. Just like what Linny had just seen, there were too many guests on the first floor. Usually, there were only a few waiters who couldn't handle it, so they had no choice but to transfer all the staff over. Even the second floor only had one waiter left. Qi Wenhan, on the other hand, had called him over for questioning. That was why Linny was able to get to the third floor without any obstructions. Seeing that there was no one around, although Linny felt a little surprised, he didn't intend to stay any longer. He was about to turn around and go downstairs when his ears suddenly twitched. There was actually someone talking in a private room not far away. Lin Yi was suddenly shocked. He had just used his divine sense to scan the third floor and didn't sense anyone's presence. Even if he didn't look particularly carefully, just a rough scan, it must be a rare expert to be able to hide from his divine sense. What kind of person would be so secretive as to intentionally conceal their aura while conversing in a private room? Lin Yi couldn't help but be a little curious, but that was all. He didn't want to disturb other people's conversation. However, a sentence from this private room suddenly made him stop. Recently, these miscellaneous items are in high demand. We have to find a way to let the headquarters send more from the secular world. Otherwise, we may run out of supplies in 2 days. Yes, the inventory was already running low yesterday. If we don't get them to send the goods quickly, we will definitely run out of supplies here. That will be troublesome. I'll think of a way to urge them again. Fortunately, the teleportation is near us, so our branch will be the first to choose. Otherwise, even if it's teleported here, it won't be our turn. Maybe we won't even get the leftovers. That's right, the strategy of the headquarters is really brilliant. They set off a secular craze in the 5 Heaven Stage Islands, making these items from the secular world a trend on the Heaven Stage Islands, becoming a symbol of identity and status, forcing everyone to compete to buy them, and if they don't buy, they will lose face and can't raise their heads in front of their friends. Even if we include the teleportation channel, the cost of each item is at most a few dozen spiritual jades, but it can be sold for a sky-high price of thousands, or even tens of thousands. Is there any business more profitable than this in the world? In the secular world, this is called a monopoly. Who asked us to be the only ones who have these things? No matter how high the price is, they can only obediently hand over their spiritual jades. Ha ha ha. Lin Yi's heart shook, and he carefully walked over. Ever since the Central Chamber of Commerce had appeared, he had always been curious about it. He was especially curious about how it could bring items from the secular world to Heavenly Fate Island. Based on their words, they should be people from the Central Chamber of Commerce. Perhaps he would be able to learn some clues. He held his breath and focused. Lin Yi did his best to restrain his aura, trying his best to blend in with his surroundings. Concealment and concealment were the most important lessons for an assassin. Lin Yi had always been an expert in this field. Not to mention experts of the same level, even experts who were an entire realm higher than him would find it difficult to detect. However, before Lin Yi could get close, the 2 people in the private room suddenly quieted down. They stopped talking halfway. Lin Yi suddenly shivered. Oh no, this was not a place to stay for long. There was no time to react, and no time to think about anything else. Lin Yi made a prompt decision and quickly put on the 1,000 silk mask, changing his face, and then turned to leave. Unfortunately, Lin Yi's movements were too slow. 2 figures appeared and disappeared mysteriously, blocking his path of retreat. Lin Yi was shocked. What level of experts were these 2? He had been so careful and restrained, but he was still easily caught by them. The 2 men who appeared in front of him, one dressed in black and masked, and the other had a sinister appearance. The similarity was that both of their auras were unfathomable. Lin Yi's golden finger could not detect them at all. In other words, they were at least nascent soul experts. However, Lin Yi had seen many nascent soul experts. Unless it was an existence like the will of heaven, others did not give him much pressure. However, these 2 people in front of him made even the true chi in his body unconsciously move. This was something he had never seen before. It showed that these 2 people were definitely not ordinary. Who are you? How dare you break into the central forbidden area? Ma Tianlang, take him down. The man in black ordered without saying anything. The sinister man named Ma Tianlang, who was standing next to him, had a murderous look in his eyes and immediately exploded. When Ma Tianlang made his move, Lin Yi's heart suddenly became turbulent. Before, he already felt that these 2 people were not ordinary. After the other party made his move, he finally saw their strength clearly. They were actually super experts of the profound ascending stage. Even in the Morning Star Academy of the East Continent, profound ascending stage experts were also the existence of the 3 giants. What kind of god was this Central Chamber of Commerce? How could they meet such monsters so casually? More importantly, This Ma Tianlang seemed to be just a subordinate of the man in black. With Lin Yi's current strength in the middle gold core stage, if the opponent was only a nascent soul expert, even if it was two late nascent soul experts, as long as he used his trump card, he still had a chance to fight. Not to mention killing the two of them, but at least taking advantage of the chaos to escape, this was not a big problem. But now, the opponent was a super expert of the profound ascending stage who was 2 realms higher than him. How could he deal with this? No matter how heaven-defying Lin Yi was, it was impossible for him to fight against such a ridiculously strong, profound, ascending stage expert with a mere middle gold core stage cultivation. Otherwise, the only result was that Lin Yi would not even have time to react and would be instantly defeated on the spot. Misunderstanding. Misunderstanding. I'm just a guest. Lin Yi quickly shouted. It was definitely impossible to make a move. He could only use this to make the other party slightly relax his vigilance and act according to the situation. Guest? Ma Tianlang looked up and down at Lin Yi, seeing that he was indeed unfamiliar, and seeing that there was no staff on duty on the 3rd floor. He believed a little in his heart, but he still sneered, misunderstanding my ass. Since you broke into this place, then don't even think about leaving. After that, Ma Tianlang's figure floated, and in the blink of an eye, he appeared behind Lin Yi and grabbed Lin Yi's right shoulder with one hand. Feeling the murderous aura in the other party's hand, even Lin Yi couldn't help but break into a cold sweat. The other party didn't use much force, and the true qi in his body was already somewhat stagnant. If he couldn't mobilize his true qi, he would be no different from an ordinary person. He could only be slaughtered by others. The difference in strength between the two was too great, and he really had no power to resist. However, Lin Yi was still a little glad in his heart. Fortunately, he said these words, and the other party only controlled him and didn't directly kill him. Otherwise, he would have become a corpse by now. Chapter 4382. Throw him into the dungeon. The man in black said emotionlessly, then turned around and left. Ma Tianlang brought Lin Yi out of the central chamber of commerce through the back door. Lin Yi looked around quietly, ready to find a chance to create chaos and escape. However, the man in black did not give him a chance. He grabbed his right shoulder and jumped up. His speed was so fast that not even his shadow could be seen. The passers-by on the street did not seem to notice their existence. Lin Yi's heart sank. It was difficult to mobilize the genuine qi in his body. Not to mention using martial arts, he could not even use genuine qi to protect his body. Moreover, his right shoulder was being held tightly by the man in black. In this situation, if he moved even a little, his right shoulder would probably be crushed into powder, let alone escape. Lin Yi had no choice but to give up the idea of resisting. He let Ma Tianlang hold his right shoulder and obediently let him carry him away. After leaving the Chamber of Commerce, Ma Tianlang suddenly sped up. Lin Yi only felt that his vision was blurred, and a moment later, he did not know which corner of Amolung City he was in. Ma Tianlang brought Lin Yi to a civilian house. It looked no different from the other buildings around it. After entering it, there seemed to be no difference. However, after passing through a few secret doors, the scene was very different. In front of him was a long, dark tunnel. No one knew where it led to. Ma Tianlang then carried Lin Yi for a while. After an unknown period of time, Ma Tianlang finally stopped. Lin Yi looked around carefully. There was an entrance in front of him. It seemed to be the dungeon that the man in black mentioned before. There were 2 guards at the entrance. His golden finger could not see through their realms, so they were obviously powerful people. Moreover, the aura they exuded was far stronger than that of an ordinary original infant stage master. Seeing this, Lin Yi could not help but feel a chill in his heart. So far, none of the people he had come into contact with were easy to deal with. No matter how he looked at it, this central chamber of commerce could not be as simple as a chamber of commerce, right? Just who was behind it? Ma Tianlang nodded to the 2 guards, raised his leg, and kicked Lin Yi into the dungeon. Then he walked away. No candlelight, no fluorite. The dungeon was pitch black, so dark that one couldn't even see their fingers if they stretched out their hands. They couldn't even sense the situation in their surroundings, only knowing that it was eerie and creepy. An ordinary person would probably be scared half to death. However, Linny was fine. Ma Tianlang didn't grab his right shoulder, and the genuine qi in his body was restored. No matter what happened, he would always have the strength to protect himself. Moreover, the surrounding environment. It was clearly visible to his divine sense. The area of this dungeon was not small. At first glance, it looked like a small square. The surrounding walls were faintly emitting the aura of a protective formation. It was extremely hard, and if one wanted to break through it with force, it would be impossible. To ordinary people, it was just wishful thinking. At the very least, ordinary nascent soul experts would not be able to shake it, unless it was a profound ascending stage powerhouse, or a heaven-defying existence like the will of heaven who was at the peak of the nascent soul stage but could easily kill a profound ascending stage powerhouse. Kid, are you new here? What did you do? At this time, a rude voice suddenly sounded in the darkness. Lin Yi turned his head towards the voice. The person who spoke was a man with a face full of scars. His appearance was very fierce and scary, and his whole body exuded a strong, violent aura. This guy was definitely not to be trifled with. Other than the man with the scar, there were quite a number of people locked up in the dungeon as well, all of them staring at Lin Yi. Some were eager to try, some were gloating, and some were watching coldly. In short, not a single one of them was friendly. After a careful glance, his divine sense probed these people one by one. Lin Yi was shocked. What are you waiting for? Do you have any good things in your hands? Take them out and share them with me. Otherwise, don't blame me for being rude. The scar-faced man thought that Lin Yi was scared by him, so he sneered complacently. At the same time, the scar-faced man also released his whole body's aura. Impressively, he was at the middle stage of the nascent soul stage. The other people in the dungeon all showed a look of fear. It could be seen that their strength was not as high as his. If there was no accident, they were also oppressed by him before, which was why they were so afraid. It was a pity. The scar-faced man was really thinking too highly of himself. Although in the outside world, a middle-stage nascent soul stage expert was high enough to be feared, and even in this dungeon, it was not enough to enter Lin Yi's eyes. He was the strongest middle-stage golden core stage expert who had a perfect breakthrough, and he had all kinds of trump cards, especially the super killer weapon that was the mixture of Dan fire and chi. Lin Yi had never been in existence that could be judged by common sense. Not to mention a golden core stage expert of the same level, even an early-stage nascent soul stage expert was nothing in front of him. As for a middle-stage nascent soul stage expert, it would only take a little more effort. The reason why Lin Yi was so shocked just now was not because of this scar-faced man, but because he actually found a familiar person he had been looking for recently, Lu Bianren. Never in his wildest dreams would Lin Yi have imagined that Lu Bianren would be locked up in this dungeon. No wonder there had been no news of him all this time. No wonder the Qitian escort agency's network hadn't been able to get a response at all. Lu Bianren had been locked up in this dungeon all year round. It would be a miracle if someone from the outside could find him. At the same time that Lin Yi found Lu Bianren was also looking at Lin Yi, but he did not know him. After all, Lin Yi was now wearing the thousand silk mask, and it was a completely unfamiliar face of a rude man. Compared to the other people who were gloating, there was no malice in Lu Bianren's eyes, and there was even a trace of pity. Every new person who came in would be bullied by this scar-faced man, and he was no exception. The scar-faced man was a master at the middle stage of the Yuanying realm, while Lu Bianren was only at the middle stage of the Gold Core realm. There was a gap of a whole realm, and he was not like Lin Yi, who could easily fight against opponents at a higher realm. In front of the scar-faced man, he could not even defend himself, let alone help a stranger. The only thing he could do was to sympathize with him. If he dared to jump out and fight openly, it was tantamount to seeking his own death. After all, this was a dungeon, and the guards outside basically did not care about what happened inside. If they really fought, he would die in vain. Seeing that Lin Yi still did not respond, the scar-faced man frowned and walked in front of Lin Yi in 2 steps. He shouted sternly, "I'm talking to you. Did you hear me? Are you talking to me?" Only then did Lin Yi move his eyes away from Lu Bianren. He did not acknowledge him in public, but turned to look at the scar-faced man and asked calmly, "Nonsense, you are the only newcomer here. If I don't talk to you, do you think I'm talking to air? Are you King sick in the head?" The scar-faced man cursed and walked over. "If you like this work, you are welcome to vote for it. Your support is my greatest motivation. Please search for Piaoyan literature." Chapter 4383. Arriving in front of Lin Yi, he spread out his hands and said, "Kid, since you're here, then you have to follow the rules here. Take out all the good stuff you have on you. I'll be frank with you first. If I'm not careful, I might accidentally kill someone. It's not good for anyone. Don't force me." "Sorry, I don't have anything on me." Lin Yi couldn't help but smile. Then, he looked at him disdainfully and said, "Even if I do? Who do you think you are? Oh, you're being arrogant?" The man with the scar didn't get angry. Instead, he laughed. The scar on his face became even more ferocious. He got closer and closer and sneered, "You're asking for it. Kid, you asked for it. Don't blame me for being merciless." As he finished speaking, the man with the scar suddenly reached out his hand to grab Lin Yi. He was about to search him. Everyone else in the dungeon was watching coldly. Many of them were even gloating. When they were first caught, they also had the same unfortunate experience. Now that they saw others following in their footsteps, not only did they not share the same hatred, but they also felt that it was reasonable. If Lin Yi wasn't bullied by the man with the scar, they would feel that it was unfair. From the beginning to the end, no one was optimistic about Lin Yi. The man with the scar was a master in the middle stage of the original level. This newcomer, although he hadn't shown his strength, didn't look like he was a match for the man with the scar. This wasn't purely looking down on Lin Yi. Although judging a book by its cover is often derogatory, in fact, most of the time, it is still reasonable. Bai Ho, WW, is said to be born from the heart. In the world of cultivation, if a person practiced a profound martial art, his appearance and temperament would naturally change. Someone like Lin Yi, who looked like a boorish man at the moment, was definitely the kind of person who didn't practice well. His strength was generally not that strong. Even Lu Bianren didn't think that Lin Yi would win. A wise man knows when to fight when the odds are against him. Since he was not strong enough, it was better to be smart and accumulate his strength first. At this time, there was only one word to describe him: unwise. However, the following scene caused everyone's jaws to drop. Even Lu Bianren could not recover from his shock for a long time. Without any warning, Lin Yi suddenly threw a frenzy 8 trigrams palm at the face of the man with the horizontal scar. Although the man with the horizontal scar had expected this guy to be a thorn in his side and had been guarding against him, when the time came, the man with the horizontal scar did not dare to attack. However, he found that he had no time to react at all. Under this mad fire 8 trigrams palm, a dignified master in the middle stage of the Yuanying stage was slapped 3 times in place, and his whole person was stunned. Immediately after, without waiting for the man with the scar to recover, Lin Yi raised his leg and performed another flaming 1,000 kicks, hitting the man with the scar in the middle of his back. Boom! Accompanied by a loud noise, the man with the horizontal scar was sprawled on the ground. It was imprinted firmly on the wall, causing the entire dungeon to tremble violently. Fortunately, it was reinforced by the defense formation. If not, it would have been impossible. Perhaps the entire dungeon would collapse from the tremors. The whole place was dead silent. Everyone's mouths were wide open, and they couldn't say a word for a long time. There was only the sound of people inhaling cold air. It was an expression of everyone's current mood. They had not been locked in this dungeon for a day or two. It had been at least a few months, and they had long gotten used to the bullying of the man with the horizontal scar. Strength was supreme, and the fist was king. The man with the horizontal scar was the strongest. Naturally, he had the final say here, and no one could resist. Of course, there were exceptions in the past. There were always hot-blooded people who didn't want to obey like this, but the end result was the same. No matter who dared to resist, they were eventually beaten half to death by the man with the horizontal scar, and from then on, They didn't even dare to let out a fart. The two guards outside did not care about any of this at all, and it further fueled the man with the horizontal scar's arrogance. They never thought that such a scene would happen today. The man with the horizontal scar, this time, kicked an iron plate and kicked himself until he bled. In an instant, everyone's fear of the man with the horizontal scar was completely transferred to Lin Yi. As for the originally arrogant man with the horizontal scar, after he forcefully dug himself out from the wall, he fell to the ground and spat out blood. Everyone looked at him with the same expression, and they were all very satisfied. After acting like a tyrant in the dungeon for so long, you deserve to have this day with the scar on your face. God really has eyes. You are also an original level cultivator? After spitting out a mouthful of blood, the man with the horizontal scar finally recovered a little. He raised his head and looked at Lin Yi in disbelief. He was obviously just a boorish man. How could he be such an expert? Since when were original level cultivators so low class? Oomph. Lin Yi looked at him disdainfully and coldly snorted. He neither admitted nor denied it. In the eyes of the others, the question of the man with the scar was simply nonsense. He, a master in the middle stage of the nascent soul stage, was almost crippled in one move. If this ruthless man was not a master in the nascent soul stage, could he be a master in the gold core stage? It was obvious that this new master was not only an original level cultivator, he was at least an expert above the middle stage original level. To deal with a scar-faced man like him, he was definitely more than enough. You. The man with the horizontal scar originally wanted to say a few harsh words to maintain the situation. In the end, when Lin Yi casually glanced at him, he immediately shrank his neck back. The imposing manner that he had summoned with great difficulty instantly dissipated. He was obviously scared to death, but he still wanted to show off. It was really funny to look at him. What about me? The corner of Lin Yi's mouth hung a faint smile. I surrender. I won't provoke you. However, don't be too delusional. If you think you can control me from now on, then you are very wrong. The man with the horizontal scar stood up shakily and pretended to be tough. I was just caught off guard just now. No matter what, I am still a middle stage original level cultivator. If we really fight to the death, both sides will suffer. Therefore, I will take a step back. I won't provoke you, and you won't provoke me either. We will mind our own business. Are you stupid? Lin Yi looked at him as if he was looking at an idiot. He suddenly waved his hand and suddenly released a chi bomb. This was something that he had secretly condensed at this moment. From the moment the man took the initiative to provoke him, Lin Yi did not plan to let this guy go easily. Since this guy took the initiative to come to him, he would at least cripple him if not kill him. Boom. There was another loud sound, and the man with the horizontal scar suddenly screamed in pain. He was once again embedded into the wall, and there was no movement for a long time. Everyone looked at each other. They thought that the man with the horizontal scar was killed just like that. They did not expect that after a while, the man with the horizontal scar suddenly cried out in pain. Trembling, he once again dug himself out of the wall. There was blood all over his head. His head had exploded into a bloody gourd. Looking at the miserable appearance of the man with the horizontal scar, even the people who had been bullied by him could not help but feel a trace of sympathy. I'm a pirate near the dark cold sea region. Pirate? Lin Yi looked at him and asked, Then how did you get in? Could it be that the Central Chamber of Commerce is so responsible that they would send people to purge you pirates? In the seas of the South Continent, pirates of all kinds could be seen everywhere. Because there was no unified force to arrest them, they could swagger through the streets. Even if they were to talk about their no-cost business in the downtown area of the city, it didn't matter. Everyone was already used to it, as long as they didn't snatch it from them. He wouldn't meddle in other people's business. That's not it. Oh no. I saw that this Central Chamber of Commerce was very profitable, so I wanted to rob their ship. I wanted to make a fortune, but I didn't expect that there were so many masters on the ship, and two mysterious ascending stage powerhouses came up. They beat me half to death and threw me here. Sun Hongbiao said with an embarrassed look. It was the first time the other people in the dungeon heard him talk about this, and they all had weird expressions on their faces. They looked at this guy as if they were looking at an idiot. The Central Chamber of Commerce was aggressive, and normal people would be too late to avoid it. This man with the horizontal scar actually dared to go to their door and rob their goods. He was lucky to not be beaten to death. Sun Hongbiao himself wore a hapless expression. In the dark cold sea region, the strength of a mid-stage nascent soul cultivator was definitely not weak. Together with a group of extremely vicious pirate subordinates, wherever he went, he would always be terror-stricken and invincible. Even if the other party also had a nascent soul stage powerhouse on their ship, they were not willing to fight him to the death. After all, it was not worth risking your life for a few spirit jades with such vicious pirates. However, who the hell would have thought that there would be a mysterious ascending stage powerhouse on the ship of the Central Chamber of Commerce? Since when were mysterious ascending stage powerhouses so worthless? He, Sun Hongbiao, actually went to rob a mysterious ascending stage powerhouse. If this wasn't bad luck, then what was? That situation was exactly the same as before. He thought that the other party was a soft persimmon that he could do anything he wanted, but before he could even be arrogant, he was beaten half to death with one slap. Everyone looked at Sun Hongbiao and couldn't help but laugh. This guy was indeed a blind idiot. He didn't learn from his previous encounter with a mysterious ascending stage powerhouse, and now he encountered this demon. He really deserved to be unlucky. How long have you been locked up? Linny continued to ask. This? Sun Hongbiao frowned and thought for a moment before replying in full detail. It's been about 10 months. Among them, I'm the one who's been here the longest. Linny heard this and looked at the others. Everyone nodded. Indeed, when they came in, Sun Hongbiao was already acting like a tyrant. So, you're the first to be caught? Linny asked. No, that's not it. A lot of people came in earlier than me, but they were all taken out. Sun Hongbiao shook his head honestly. Pirate leaders like him were vicious, but if they really met a tough guy like Lin A, they would be more obedient than anyone else, because they believed more than anyone else in the rules of Jianghu where the strong ruled. Taken out? What do you mean, let go? Linny couldn't help but feel a little strange. The Central Chamber of Commerce was so secretive that they even captured guests like him, who had not done anything bad, without saying a word. They shouldn't be so kind as to easily let these people go unharmed, right? Many other people in the dungeon also pricked up their ears when they heard this. Sun Hongbiao had always bullied them and never mentioned anything about this. Even those who had been locked up for a few months did not know much about these things. Most of them were as clueless as Lin Yi and confused. It was rare for Sun Hongbiao to be forced to speak by this demon. This matter concerned everyone's future, so everyone naturally had to listen carefully. Chapter 4385. Human Experimentation? Lin Yi's eyes lit up. Of course, the people on Sky Class Island didn't understand this term, but everyone in the common world knew about it. The Fire Wolf gang that Zhang Wen was in specialized in this. Since the appearance of the common world's department stores, Lin Yi already felt that this Central Chamber of Commerce was inextricably linked to the common world. He didn't expect it to be so. Now, there was a human experimentation. More and more evidence showed that this Central Chamber of Commerce was most likely developed from the common world. However, back then, the common world's top forces gathered together, and with so many people, they barely managed to activate the teleportation circle and send them to Sky Class Island. Just what kind of power was behind this Central Chamber of Commerce? Not only did they successfully extend their tentacles to the Heavenly Stage Islands, but they also easily swept through the 5 Heavenly Stage Islands. It could be said that they were coming aggressively, showing an unstoppable state of madness. The key was that there were even profound ascending stage masters in charge, and it seemed that there were more than 1 or 2 of them. Even Lin Yi didn't dare to think too deeply about this power. It was too shocking. Yes, human experimentation. Anyway, after those people were taken out, none of them came back. I don't know if they died or something, but I don't think it's anything good. Plus, with my nascent soul mid-stage strength, no one here is stronger than me. So, every time they ask for someone, I'll let someone else take the blame. I won't go, Sun Hongbiao said proudly. Although he didn't have good eyesight, he was a pirate leader in the magic cold sea. He wasn't an idiot. Even if he didn't understand human experimentation, he could roughly tell if it was good or bad. Predicting good or bad luck sounded mysterious, but many masters who reached a certain level actually had this ability. It was just that the accuracy was different. Let others go? You call the shots in this dungeon. Those guards outside, those profound ascending stage masters listen to you? Lin Yi sneered. In front of a profound ascending stage master, you're nothing. Hearing that, the others sneered and mocked him. Sun Hongbiao's face instantly turned red. He was used to being arrogant, trying to flatter himself for no reason. Even though he had suffered a lot because of it, he couldn't change his character. With Sun Hongbiao's nascent soul mid-stage strength, he could act arrogantly in front of these people, but to the profound ascending stage masters outside, they were ants that could be easily crushed with one foot. They were ants that could be easily crushed to death with one foot. If they really wanted to take people out for human experiments, would they even discuss it with Sun Hongbiao? If Sun Hongbiao really had such a big face, why would he be locked up in this dungeon? Bullshit. That? Sun Hongbiao glared at everyone, but he didn't dare show his temper in front of Lin Yi. He scratched his head awkwardly and said, "They didn't want to talk to me at first, but after a while, I realized that they weren't interested in nascent soul masters. He took the others away one by one, but he didn't care about me at all. Look, there's another nascent soul cultivator over there. It's been a long time, and he hasn't been taken away." Following Sun Hongbiao's finger, in the corner of the dungeon, Lin Yi saw an ordinary-looking man in a green robe. He was meditating where he was. Yes, that's right. The man in green saw Lin Yi's gaze and nodded quickly. That was because he was quite strong. Sun Hongbiao never provoked him, so he naturally wouldn't provoke Sun Hongbiao. But this new fiend could beat Sun Hongbiao into such a miserable state. It was obvious that he was not to be trifled with. Facing Lin Yi's question, of course, he didn't dare to neglect it. Oh, that's strange. Lin Yi couldn't help but frown. He had heard a little about human experimentation. It was actually like doing a scientific experiment. No matter what the purpose was, in order to find the most effective method, a large number of human samples would be taken. And the human samples had to be involved at all levels. It didn't make sense that nascent soul stage masters were excluded, unless the Central Chamber of Commerce's human experimentation research didn't include nascent soul stage masters, but specifically targeted golden core stage masters. Hearing Sun Hongbiao's words, everyone else in the dungeon started to panic. Apart from the green-clothed man in the nascent soul realm, they were all experts in the gold core realm. Didn't that mean that they would be dragged out to do some human experiments one day? Everyone knew that it was definitely not something good. Otherwise, the Central Chamber of Commerce wouldn't have captured them and locked them up here. Maybe after the human experimentation, they wouldn't even have a whole corpse left. Everyone here was like pigs waiting to be slaughtered. I've been here for a long time, and I've never caused trouble for them. I've even made the people in the dungeon obedient, so they turn a blind eye to me, Sun Hongbiao said a little proudly. Now that he was trapped in the dungeon and couldn't see the light of day, it naturally couldn't compare to the scenery outside. But to be able to find a sense of superiority from these people was also a rare psychological comfort. Lin Yi, on the other hand, didn't find the word strange. In order to manage a prison full of practitioners, they needed a prison tyrant to help them suppress the prisoners, other than strict monitoring. An existence like Sun Hongbiao wasn't a bad thing for the guards outside. In fact, they were more than happy to see it happen. So, the other golden core stage masters have all been taken away? Lin Yi asked thoughtfully. Yes. Anyway, those who came earlier than me have all been taken away. Those who came later than me have also been taken away. Sun Hongbiao nodded. His gaze swept across the other people in the dungeon, and he threatened them maliciously. These people, it's only a matter of time. Hee. Everyone couldn't help but shrink their necks in fear. Even Lu Bianren, who was always calm, was obviously flustered. No matter how strong a master was, he still couldn't get rid of the fear of the unknown. However, as a golden core stage master, Lin Yi wasn't too worried at the moment. First, he knew what human experimentation was. Second, compared to the others here, he was stronger. Naturally, he was more confident that he could deal with all kinds of threats. Apart from this, what else do you know? Lin Yi continued to ask. Sun Hongbiao was the one who had been here the longest, so he must know the most. Chapter 4386. Really? Lin Yi frowned and asked. Unspecified currency. Seeing that Lin Yi didn't seem to believe him, he quickly raised his hand and swore, It's true, it's true. I swear to the heavens, I really don't know. Although those profound ascension practitioners turned a blind eye to me, they never talked to me, and I didn't dare to ask. One wrong question might kill me. Okay, next. Lin Yi did not continue to make things difficult for Sun Hongbiao, and immediately turned to the people next to him. Why were they caught? How long were they locked up here? And asked them one by one. Although everyone was a little puzzled as to why Lin Yi did this, but with Sun Hongbiao's experience there, they would not dare to provoke such a cruel master. Moreover, it was just asking 2 questions. It was not a big deal, and they were not like Sun Hongbiao who would rob treasures at every turn. Naturally, they were happy to cooperate. Everyone asked one by one, and everyone had different reasons. Some had a conflict with the Central Chamber of Commerce because they were buying things. Some had a drink and went to the Central Chamber of Commerce to cause trouble, and some owed the Central Chamber of Commerce spiritual jades. There were all kinds of strange reasons, no matter what they could think of, no matter what kind of messy reasons. Some even made people not know whether to laugh or cry. But all of them had one thing in common, and that was that they were all related to the Central Chamber of Commerce. After asking around, it was finally Lu Bianren's turn. Lin Yi deliberately asked them one by one. In addition to wanting to understand as much as possible, he actually wanted to ask Lu Bianren the most, but he did not want to expose his identity, so he could not name him alone. So he could only use this method to deceive people. The two faced each other at close range. Lu Bianren felt that Lin Yi looked familiar, as if he had seen him before. Of course, he had never seen this rough and boorish face before, but Lin Yi's temperament was really familiar and a little strange. The strange thing was, Lin Yi's temperament really did not match his rough and boorish appearance. Most people would not feel it if they did not look carefully, but now that they felt it at such a close distance, they would feel out of place. In the past, when Lu Bianren was in the welcoming pavilion, because his authority was taken away, he had nothing to do. Therefore, he had been studying all kinds of ancient books, especially the theory of face-to-face physiognomy. As the saying goes, one's appearance is born from one's heart. Lin Yi's current rough and boorish appearance was completely incompatible with his temperament. For Lu Bianren, who was proficient in physiognomy, this was simply subverting common sense. It was not scientific at all. However, Lu Bianren did not know that this fiend was Lin Yi. He was just as respectful as everyone else, not daring to be neglectful. I originally went to the Central Chamber of Commerce to gather information, but I don't know why or how I offended them, but I was inexplicably captured. Even now, I still haven't figured out the whole story. Lu Bianren smiled bitterly. Everyone was in disbelief, regardless of the reason, whether it was a big or small matter. When they were arrested, they had at least offended the Central Chamber of Commerce. This Lu Bianren was naturally the same. How could he be arrested just for gathering information? These words were not entirely true. He must be hiding something. This was everyone's first reaction. However, Lu Bianren was telling the truth. This was the truth. Up until now, he was still confused and had no idea what was going on. Lin Yi was also a little surprised, but he did not think that Lu Bianren was lying. Because Lu Bianren had always been open and above board, and he was an upright person. He would not deliberately fabricate and deceive for this kind of thing. What information did you go to gather? Lin Yi continued to ask without batting an eyelid. This, can I not say? Lu Bianren was a little embarrassed. Everyone was suddenly in an uproar, and Sun Hongbiao looked like he was looking at a dead man. This fiend in front of him could even beat a ruthless person like him half to death. You are just a golden core expert, and you dare to put on airs in front of him? It's just a question that doesn't matter. It's not like he will cut your flesh. Is it necessary to provoke such a ruthless person for such a small matter? Even if there is something unspeakable in it, can't you just make up a lie? Why be so direct? Isn't this courting death? However, this was Lu Bianren's style of doing things. If he could say it, he would say it. If he didn't want to say it, he would be straightforward. It was indeed easy to make up a lie, but if he would do that, then he would not be Lu Bianren. Lu Bianren did not have any friendship with these people in the dungeon. Everyone was gloating, waiting for the fiend, Lin Yi, to flip out and watch the show. However, Lin Yi's reaction was far beyond their expectations. All right, then forget it. Lin Yi nodded calmly, and then moved on to the next person. Such a calm reaction made everyone wonder if they were blind, especially Sun Hongbiao, who almost cursed it out loud on the spot. When he was dealing with him just now, this demon god was ruthless. There was no way he was going to be so easy to negotiate. Even Lu Bianren himself felt a little surprised. He was prepared to receive the other party's anger, but who would have thought that it would really be so easy? With just a few words, it was over. If it were anyone else, this person in front of him would probably have given them a kick. Lu Bianren could not help but wonder if this strange sense of familiarity was really not an illusion. Had he really dealt with this person before? Everyone looked at each other, but did not dare to make a sound. They could only watch as Lin Yi continued to ask questions with a belly full of questions. Finally, after asking everyone in the dungeon, Lin Yi calmly found a place to sit cross-legged. Coincidentally, it was right next to Lu Bianren. This time, even if everyone did not know what was going on, they began to understand. This fiend, who was even more ruthless than Sun Hongbiao, was obviously treating Lu Bianren differently. In this dungeon, Lu Bianren had always been quiet and had never done anything out of line. In everyone's eyes, he had always been the kind of person who was easy to bully. But now, they had to think about it a little more in the future. Lu Bianren was indeed easy to bully, but if he made the fiend next to him unhappy, then he would not be able to find his grave even if he cried. In this way, not only was everyone surprised and suspicious, even Lu Bianren himself was wondering if he had dealt with this person before. He did not look familiar, but his temperament was indeed very familiar. Chapter 4387. Although this dungeon did not give people the feeling that the guards were not so strict, and there was no torture, at first glance, it still felt quite peaceful, and there was no sense of tension, but people with discerning eyes could see that this was definitely a place of trouble, and they could not stay for long. There were many masters in the Central Chamber of Commerce. If they were really selected to do human experiments, then it would be too late. At that time, there must be a profound ascending stage master. Even with Lin Yi's trump card, it would be difficult for him to do anything in front of a ridiculously strong profound ascending stage master. The success rate of taking the opportunity to escape may be less than 10%. Therefore, if he wanted to save his life, the only way was to escape from this dark dungeon before he was selected to do human experiments. Although the dungeon was blessed by a protective formation, and the walls were extremely hard, even with the destructive power of a large number of nascent soul stage masters, it would be difficult to break it. But in Lin Yi's view, as long as his Danfire True Chi Bomb was condensed long enough, he still had a great chance of blowing it up. However, it was not difficult to blow up the dungeon, but it could not guarantee that the people inside would not be injured. He could not care less about other people's lives, but it was not easy to find Lu Bianren, and Lin Yi could not ignore his life. And if he wanted to successfully escape from the prison, the most difficult point was not to destroy the dungeon, but the guards outside. When Lin Yi was caught by Ma Tianling before, he saw two guards outside, and both of them were extraordinary masters. Lin Yi felt that they were at least at the peak of the late stage of nascent soul stage, and there might even be a profound ascending stage master among them. If it was before, letting a profound ascending stage master be a guard, this kind of thing was simply a fantasy, and Lin Yi would never believe it. But after experiencing today's events, even if he did not believe it, he had to believe it. Since a profound ascending stage master could be a follower of others, then it did not seem too strange to be a guard, right? Prepare for the best. Since he had decided to break out of the prison, he had to consider the worst-case scenario. Otherwise, if he acted rashly, not only would he not be able to escape, but he would also be captured and put under strict surveillance. He might even be sent to be used as a human experiment. That would truly be crying without tears. Therefore, before completely probing out the situation outside, Lin Yi would not act rashly. Right now, the only choice was, he would act according to the circumstances. However, while Lin Yi was silently calculating, he also began to slowly compress and condense the super alchemic fire true chi bomb. Even if he decided to act according to the circumstances, he had to first prepare this super killer weapon in advance. Otherwise, if the opportunity really came, it would be fleeting, and it would be too late to compress it at the last minute. Lin Yi didn't say anything. Everyone else in the dungeon, everyone, including Lu Bianren and Sun Hongbiao, held their breaths and dared not speak, fearing that they might attract Lin Yi's attention and disgust. It was not worth it to be beaten half to death by this demon for no reason. In such a dark silence, after who knows how long, the dungeon doors suddenly opened, and two people walked in one after another. Lin Yi carefully looked at the two without a trace, and he could be sure that these two were the guards he saw before. Perhaps it was to deter the people in the dungeon. To avoid some unnecessary trouble, the momentum of these two people was not restrained at all. The surging and powerful aura was above everyone's head, making everyone tremble in fear, not daring to have the slightest disloyalty. For the first time, Lin Yi clearly felt the strength of these two people. He couldn't help but be shocked, and at the same time secretly felt a little scared. Of these two people, one was a peak Yuanying late-stage master, which was not too much to worry about, but the other was a real profound ascending stage master. Fortunately, he had prepared for the worst before. Otherwise, if he really broke out of the dungeon, Lin Yi estimated that he would be a corpse now. Whose turn is it this time? The peaked Yuanying late-stage master pouted and looked at Sun Hongbiao, while the profound ascending stage master stood on the side, bored. For a super existence of his level, it was already a waste of talent to guard such a small dungeon. If it wasn't for the fact that human experimentation was the most important thing in the entire organization, he would not be willing to stay in this place at all. Of course, he didn't need to worry about trivial things like sample extraction. Not only him, but even the peak Yuanying late-stage master was too lazy to pay attention to these people in the dungeon. Basically, according to the order of first come, first served, and let the prison tyrant, Sun Hongbiao, help decide. Anyway, as long as the samples were provided on time, nothing else mattered. This one. Sun Hongbiao quickly pointed at someone. Lin Yi suddenly frowned. The person Sun Hongbiao pointed at was actually Lu Bianren, who was sitting next to him. It wasn't easy to find Lu Bianren, but in the end, Lu Bianren was taken away for human experimentation before he could even recognize him. From then on, his life and death were unknown. Was there anything more *ket up than this in the world? Lin Yi's mind turned quickly, and he immediately made up his mind. If it really didn't work, then he could only release the ultimate weapon now. With the huge destructive power of the Super Dan Fire True Chi Bomb, even if the opponent was a profound ascending stage master, it should be difficult for them to react quickly if they were caught off guard. Taking advantage of the chaos, he would quickly escape with Lu Bianren. However, the success rate of doing so was not high. Unless it was absolutely necessary, Lin Yi didn't want to take such a risky move. He immediately stared at Sun Hongbiao fiercely. Although Sun Hongbiao was a blind idiot, he had suffered so much at the hands of Lin Yi, and it had already left a shadow in his heart. As soon as he saw Lin Yi's unfriendly gaze, his heart suddenly skipped a beat, and his back suddenly broke out in a cold sweat. According to the order of first come, first served, it was indeed Lu Bianren's turn this time. But looking at the meaning of this demon, it was obvious that he didn't want Lu Bianren to be taken away. If he disobeyed him, he was afraid that even the half of his life that he had painstakingly picked up would be buried together with Lu Bianren. Oh no, I remembered wrong. It's this one. Sun Hongbiao quickly changed his words and pointed at a person at the door. He wanted to point at Lin Yi, but unfortunately, Lin Yi had just been caught today, and the guards must still have an impression of him. Moreover, this was a nascent soul stage master who was stronger than him. They didn't want him at all. Even if he pointed at him, it would be useless. Later, when the guards left, Lin Yi would definitely kill him first. If he knew that Lin Yi was actually just a middle-stage gold core stage master, Sun Hongbiao would probably cry and faint in the toilet. He didn't know what this demon had to do with him, and he didn't know what this demon was planning. But he didn't dare to ask, and could only do the same as Sun Hongbiao and the others. He looked on anxiously from the side. Use your true qi to protect your body, or I won't care if you die. Lin Yi shouted again, and the super alchemy fire true qi bomb, which he had been condensing and compressing, slowly appeared on his palms. Although it hadn't exploded yet, but the horrifying aura that leaked out from it, even if it was just a little bit, was enough to make everyone's heart jump. They looked at Lin Yi as if they were looking at a monster, trembling with fear and terror. They didn't know what kind of move it was, and they didn't know how it was condensed, but that didn't hinder their perception of danger. Such a terrifying aura that could destroy heaven and earth, it was definitely not a joke. Even if they were all experts above the golden core stage, once they were affected by it, they would die without a doubt. This demon was indeed a demon that no one could afford to offend. At this point, everyone had more or less guessed Lin Yi's intention. They were all anxious and shocked, but they also couldn't help but look hopeful. No matter who it was, being locked up in this sunless dungeon and living in fear every day, wondering if they would be the next subject of the human experiment, after a long time, they would be scared to the point of mental illness. If there was a chance to escape from the dungeon, even if there was only a slim chance of survival, no one would let it go easily. Even Sun Hongbiao was the same. The human experiment didn't need nascent soul experts now, but who knew what would happen in the future? In such a troublesome place, of course they had to escape as soon as possible, or they wouldn't even know when they would die. Everyone hurriedly activated their true qi to protect themselves, and raised their heads, waiting for Lin Yi's next move. But hope was hope. Many of them had been locked up for a long time, and to a greater extent, they were just there to watch the show. They didn't believe that Lin Yi could succeed. After all, Lin Yi was definitely not the first to have the idea of breaking out of the prison. Many people, including Sun Hongbiao, had the same idea, and some had even put it into practice. But the result was obvious. They had all failed. The dungeon was reinforced by a special protective formation, so it was extremely sturdy. Normal nascent soul experts couldn't break it at all, unless they were profound ascension experts. But this demon, although brutal, could beat up Sun Hongbiao, a middle nascent soul expert. He was indeed very strong. But to say that he was a profound ascension giant, that was too much. They were hopeful, but they didn't think much of it. This was the mentality of the people in the dungeon. But when Lin Yi suddenly made his move, their eyes instantly changed. Boom, boom, boom. The ground shook, and everyone couldn't even count how many times there were. Maybe it was the shocking effect of the super bomb, or maybe it was the chain reaction, but everyone just felt like the sky was falling and the earth was cracking, as if it was the end of the world, and they were panic-stricken. Even though many people had protected themselves with true qi, they were still hurt by the aftershocks. Some were even seriously injured, and almost died on the spot. It's open. It's really open. Sun Hongbiao suddenly pointed forward and shouted in ecstasy. In the chaos, although everyone couldn't hear what he was shouting, they looked in the direction of his finger, and their expressions immediately froze. The dungeon had not been completely destroyed, but there was no doubt that the protective array on the walls had been destroyed, because not far in front of them, in a place where the sun could not be seen, a ray of sunlight that had not shone for a long time suddenly shone through. Some were in disbelief, some were shocked, some were overjoyed, and some were even sobbing. At this moment, everyone's expressions in the dungeon were all very colorful. Chapter 43-89. The little bit of luck and hope in these people's hearts had long been eroded and buried by the boundless darkness. They thought that this might be the end of their lives, but they never dreamed that there would be a day where they could see the light of day again. Let's go. Lin Yi suddenly pulled Lu Bianren and rushed forward with his head down. Everything was within his expectations. The Superdan fire Jinchi bomb had been brewing for so long. If it still couldn't blow up the dungeon, then it would be really strange. Lu Bianren was originally shocked like the others, but when he was suddenly pulled by Lin Yi, he sprained his ankle and fell to the ground. He even ate a mouthful of dust. But Lin Yi didn't care about that. He just dragged him and rushed out. The opportunity was fleeting. Although the dungeon had been successfully blown up, as Lin Yi had calculated before, this was only the most basic and simple first step. Whether they could successfully escape or not, the next step was the key. The explosion was earth-shattering. Even an ordinary person, even if they were 100 miles away, would be able to detect it, not to mention that the other party was at the profound ascension stage. Once they noticed it, they would definitely rush over here. If they couldn't escape before they arrived, then all their previous efforts would be in vain. Watching Lin Yi run away with Lu Bianren, Sun Hongbiao, and the others finally reacted. After looking at each other, they hurriedly rushed forward with all their strength. Even though their Zhanqi protection was not strong enough, they were still screaming and limping as they ran. Being locked in the dungeon meant that they could only sit and wait to be taken away for human experiments. If they didn't run now, when would they? After blowing up the broken dungeon door, Lin Yi dragged Lu Bianren with one hand and was the first to rush out of the dungeon and see the light of day again. There was a tunnel between the dungeon and the Demon Long City, but at this time, they were running for their lives. Whoever rushed into the tunnel would be an idiot. The other party could just block them from the front and back, and they would be able to catch a turtle in a jar. Therefore, his only choice was to escape to the open space outside. Looking around, all he could see were towering mountains and lofty ridges. The mountain ranges were continuous, rising and falling. It was actually a huge mountain range. This was beyond Lin Yi's expectation. He had thought that the Devilong Sea region was only the size of a palm, and that he would be able to see the sea at a glance once he left the Devilong City. He had never thought that there would be such a majestic mountain range in front of him. Then, Sun Hongbiao and the others rushed out from behind. All of them looked at the scene around them, unable to conceal the ecstasy on their faces. They thought that they had escaped just like that, and they could finally relax. However, Lin Yi did not dare to hesitate. His divine sense was extremely powerful and sensitive, enough to surpass many original infant stage cultivators. Lin Yi could clearly feel that he was within a radius of less than 5 miles. There were at least 4 or 5 powerful auras approaching from all directions. Among them, there was the terrifying aura of a mysterious ascending stage giant. Even if it was Lin Yi, otherwise, he would have already escaped when he was in the Central Chamber of Commerce. Why wait until now? The only chance was when the mysterious ascending stage giant rushed back, a mere 5 miles distance. For a mysterious ascending stage giant, it was just a matter of a thought. At most, it would only take 3 breaths for them to appear above their heads. It was a race against time. Lin Yi did not even dare to breathe. He dragged Lu Bianren, who was still in a daze, and chose a direction where there were no experts around, and immediately ran with all his might. Sun Hongbiao and the others immediately reacted, and without saying a word, they followed Lin Yi and ran. When faced with the threat of death, people's potential was absolutely beyond imagination. Although most of the people here were only golden core stage cultivators, when they began to run with all their might, their speed was not to be underestimated. Perhaps even some original infant stage cultivators could not compare to them. Split up, or we will all die. Lin Yi yelled when he saw these people following him like they were grasping at straws, trying to save their lives. With so many people running together, the target was too big. Any mysterious ascending stage cultivator could easily catch up with them, and even Lin Yi himself would not be able to escape. Only by splitting up and running would they have a chance. After all, these people in the Central Chamber of Commerce were powerful, but they seemed to be walking the elite route. Lin Yi had not seen many small fries so far, and there were 40 to 50 people here. Once they split up and ran, no matter how strong the experts in the Central Chamber of Commerce were, they would not be able to split up. The most likely result was that the unlucky ones would be caught first, but the lucky ones would have a chance to escape from under their noses. Anyone could understand such a simple logic. After Lin Yi shouted, Sun Hongbiao, and the others immediately split up. In terms of pure strength, no one here, including Lin Yi, could escape from the hands of a mysterious ascending stage cultivator. So their only choice was to bet on their luck. Seeing that everyone had scattered, Lin Yi was relieved, but he still did not dare to neglect. He fully used the butterfly subtle steps, coupled with the speed bonus of the gale-chasing lightning boots, and the true chi ejection technique he mastered after coming to the heavenly stage island. His speed was instantly pushed to the extreme, leaving only a series of blurred figures, flashing quickly in the dense forest. With such amazing speed, how was this running? It was simply flying. Unless it was a freak like the will of heaven, ordinary nascent soul stage masters could not catch up at all. So as long as he was not the first target of a mysterious ascending stage master, the probability of Lin Yi successfully escaping was at least more than 70%. Lin Yi dragged the confused Lu Bianren as he took the lead, and in less than 3 breaths, he heard cries of pain from behind him. He didn't even need to turn his head to look to know that someone had been caught by the masters of the Central Chamber of Commerce. As for what happened to them, whether they were dead or alive, that was something he didn't know. However, none of this had anything to do with Lin Yi. He had done all he could. Those people weren't strong enough, they weren't lucky enough to escape, so they couldn't blame anyone else. Even if they didn't run, they would still die in the dungeon. Lin Yi gave them a chance, so what could they do if they didn't take it? Without stopping, Lin Yi dragged Lu Bianren all the way. After rushing out of the vast mountains, there was a boundless sea in front of him. His luck was not bad. At least he was not targeted by a mysterious ascending stage master. As for the others, even if they noticed and wanted to catch up, in the face of Lin Yi's terrifying speed, most of them were powerless. Chapter 4390. Lin Yi was not afraid of running out of energy. As long as his body could take it, he could run until the sky turned dark. On the contrary, Lu Bianren, who had been dragged all the way, was dizzy. Although he was also a middle-stage gold core master, Lu Bianren had never experienced such a thrilling speed. Plus, he wasn't in control of his own body from start to finish. He was just being swung around by Lin Yi, and his stomach was already churning. He hadn't had a proper meal for a couple of months in the dungeon, and Lu Bianren was throwing up. Looking at Lu Bianren, who had always been calm and unshakable, with a face full of pain and vomiting, Lin Yi did not know whether to laugh or cry. However, he did not have time to stop and let Lu Bianren breathe. Even if he wanted to vomit, he had to wait until he was out of danger. Regardless of the consequences, Lin Yi ran along the coastline for a full 6 hours. Finally, he saw the city wall of Emolong City. There was no aura of a powerful master behind him. They must have given up on chasing after him. After all, Lin Yi wasn't a serious criminal to the Central Merchant Group. He'd only been caught by accident on the 3rd floor, and those people probably didn't even remember what Lin Yi looked like. Now that they were chasing after so many people, it wasn't surprising that they'd missed Lin Yi and Lu Bianren, and there was no need to get so many people involved. After entering the downtown area, Lin Yi immediately restrained his aura. He was no different from an ordinary passerby. Lu Bianren, on the other hand, had already lost his aura. Other than a slight stumble, no one would pay attention to him. After a few turns, Lin Yi brought Lu Bianren to the inn where the Equal of Heaven escort agency was staying. Without saying anything, he returned to his room. The waiter next to him did not think much. After all, there were so many people coming and going. It was impossible for them to remember the appearance of all the guests. Since they could open the door, it meant that they were serious guests. There was nothing to be suspicious about. Who? Only then did Lin Yi let out a sigh of relief. Even if he knew that the other party was unlikely to mobilize a large force, but the pressure brought by a profound ascending stage master was really not a small matter. Even Lin Yi was not relaxed. As for Lu Bianren, although he had been dragged along by Lin Yi the whole way and had not exerted any strength on his own, his current condition was much worse than Lin Yi's. He had already been on the verge of collapsing along the way, and now that he had relaxed, he was even more battered and exhausted. He almost fainted on the spot. Standing at the side and watching Lu Bianren's dizzy appearance, Lin Yi couldn't help but laugh. Lu Bianren had always been someone who would remain calm even if Mount Tai collapsed in front of him. After knowing him for so long, this was the first time he had seen Lu Bianren so embarrassed. "Thank you for saving my life, great hero." After feeling dizzy for a while, Lu Bianren recovered a little and quickly cupped his hands to thank Lin Yi. Although he was puzzled, he knew that this Wu Fu, who he had never met before, was trying to save him, so he did not resist at all. Otherwise, even if he wasn't a match for him, once he really struggled, even Lin Yi would find it difficult to deal with. "No need, this is what I should do." Lin Yi smiled and waved his hand. "What I should do?" Lu Bianren looked at Lin Yi with a strange expression, but he didn't rashly ask for details. Instead, he said, "Dare I ask, great hero, what is your intention in bringing me here? If there is nothing else, then I will take my leave first." "I'll take my leave first. I'll repay you for saving my life in the future." "Don't be in a hurry to leave." Lin Yi reached out to stop him. With a mischievous face, he asked, "There is no such thing as a free lunch in this world. Aren't you curious at all? Don't you want to ask who I am and why I went out of my way to save you?" I am indeed curious. If it is convenient, I hope you will not be stingy with your guidance." Lu Bianren's heart immediately sank. Could it be that this guy came with ill intentions? He had just escaped from the wolf's den and entered the tiger's cave? Lin Yi smiled mysteriously and didn't answer. He reached out and slowly took off the thousand silk mask. Seeing Lin Yi's original appearance, Lu Bianren, who was originally a little nervous, was immediately stunned and couldn't speak for a long time. You are Lin Yi." Lu Bianren couldn't help but widen his eyes in surprise and joy. Never in his dreams would he have thought that this powerful and vicious demon was actually Lin Yi. "Haha, senior brother Lu. I trust you have been well since we last met." Lin Yi smiled and cupped his fists. "So it really is you. Aya, you gave me such a fright." Lu Bianren's heart finally fell to the ground. His whole person seemed to deflate, and he slumped on the stool without a care for his image. He had been on tenterhooks, but since the other party was Lin Yi, he naturally had nothing to worry about. Forgive me. The Jianghu is dangerous. I wore a mask to change my appearance just in case." Lin Yi smiled and sat down with him. He poured a cup of tea for Lu Bianren and himself. "Yes, this should be done. If I had been as careful as you, perhaps I wouldn't have ended up in this situation today." Lu Bianren sighed and drank the tea in one gulp. Then he looked up and down at Lin Yi again. He clicked his tongue in wonder and asked doubtfully, "Junior brother Lin Yi, why are you here?" Lu Bianren really had a stomach full of questions now. Just a year ago, Lin Yi was still a newcomer who had just been teleported here from the mortal world. Now, in just a short year, he had actually grown into a ruthless person who could even beat Sun Hongbiao, a mid-stage nascent soul expert. Wasn't this growth too fast? Especially the move that collapsed the dungeon just now. Its power was strong enough to destroy heaven and earth. Lu Bianren even suspected that it had exceeded the level of a nascent soul expert. With such a terrifying and heaven-defying growth speed, his junior brother's aptitude was not just 1 in 10,000. Even saying that it was 1 in 100 million was definitely underestimating him. I became an inner disciple 2 months ago and accepted a trial mission, which was to capture the evil cultivator Wu Baoyang. His most recent appearance was in the Weiqian Sea of the southern continent, so I came here. Lin Yi answered. "Junior brother Lin Yi, you're already an inner disciple?" Lu Bianren was slightly stunned when he heard the words, but then he understood. "That's right. With your current strength, you can even beat Sun Hongbiao. Not to mention being an inner disciple, you're more than enough to be an elder of the 3 pavilions." In the 3 pavilions of the North Island, a nascent soul expert had the opportunity to become an elder. With Lin Yi's current strength, he could even crush most of them. Chapter 4391. Hehe, it's a win-win situation. Senior brother Lu, you've been missing for so long, and senior brother Ku and the others are worried about you. I heard from the master of the Xinjiang Pavilion that you were here, and I saw a mission like this, so I came to try my luck. I didn't think I'd actually run into one. You. Sigh. Lu Bianren pointed at Lin Yi and sighed. He was touched, but at the same time, he couldn't help but blame himself. Back in the Welcome Pavilion, I had the title of Third Pavilion Master for nothing, but I couldn't help you at all. Now, I have caused you to worry for me. I can't feel at ease. Senior brother Lu, that's where you're wrong. It's rare for us to get along so well, and we're all on the same side. If we don't do anything when you suddenly disappear, wouldn't that be too inhumane? Linny said disapprovingly. This, you are right, but you don't have to take such a risk for me. What if you get yourself into trouble? Then I won't be able to forgive myself even if I die 1,000 times. Lu Bianren said with lingering fear. Didn't I successfully get away? Anyway, the ending is a happy one. Besides, I came here for the trial mission, not to look for you. Senior brother Lu, don't take it to heart. Linny smiled. All right. Lu Bianren nodded helplessly. However, with his temperament, how could he let go of such a great kindness so easily? He just kept it in his heart and firmly remembered it. Then, he asked, by the way, how is Kazanal now? Senior brother Ku is now the third pavilion master of the Welcome Pavilion. He has Xiao Ran, Xiao Hongkai, and Li Zhengming to help him. There should be no problem. Linny replied. Ku Zhongla became the third pavilion master? The pavilion master of Jinyang Pavilion nodded. Lu Bianren was shocked. The Welcoming Pavilion's third pavilion lord position, no matter who it was, had to be approved by the Clear Cloud Pavilion's pavilion lord, Yu Zhenyang. Merely relying on his own hard work would not be able to gain Yu Zhenyang's recognition. Needless to say, Linny must have contributed to this. Lu Bianren looked at Linny in shock. As the pavilion master of the Blue Cloud Pavilion, Yu Zhenyang's judgment of people was not inferior to that of Shanghai Tianhua. This junior brother of his was truly a heaven-defying genius for Yu Zhenyang to appreciate him so much. If he knew that Linny was not only appreciated by Yu Zhenyang, but even Shanghai Tianhua, the Soaring Pavilion's pavilion master, attached great importance to him and even treated him the same way as Ramjia back then, Lu Bianren would probably faint on the spot. That's right, so we're all fine. Senior brother Lu, you don't have to worry. Linny nodded and asked, let's talk about you. How did you get captured by the Central Chamber of Commerce? This question had been asked in the dungeon before. At that time, Lu Bianren did not know that it was Lin Yi, so he refused to elaborate. Lin Yi naturally did not force him. After all, there were too many people, but now there was no such concern. Junior brother Lin Yi, since you know about me from Pavilion Master Yu, then you should know what I'm doing here, right? Lu Bianren did not answer but asked. I know. Senior brother Lu, you came here in the name of a task. If I'm not wrong, it must be to find the news of Deputy Pavilion Master Yao. Linny nodded. Yes, I came to the South Continent this time. It's to inquire about Deputy Pavilion Master Yao Luanzhan. Lu Bianren said with a faint gaze. As far as I know, he also disappeared in this South Continent sea, and before that, he actually came here to participate in a trial reward task organized by a person to repair an array. Repair array? Lin Yi was surprised. This was the first time he heard Yao Luanzhan's full name, so he naturally did not know much about it. He could not help but ask curiously, so, Deputy Pavilion Master Yao is an array master? On the Heaven Stage Island, compared to the highly respected alchemy, casting was already considered an unpopular industry. As for array masters, it was even more unpopular than casting. Basically, no one would talk about it. In fact, looking at the 5 great Heaven Stage Islands, not to mention array masters, even decent array masters were rare. Even if there were, it was only a very shallow protective array. As for the complex and exquisite teleportation arrays, 9 out of 10 were left behind many years ago. Until now, Linny had never heard of anyone who could make a teleportation array. It can't be said that he is an array master. In this era, the people who can really become an array master have basically disappeared. Although Deputy Pavilion Master Yao has always been very interested in this aspect and has been spending a lot of effort to study it, he can only be regarded as proficient in it. He can't personally arrange a truly exquisite and profound array. However, in terms of maintaining and repairing array, He is quite experienced. Lu Bienren explained. I see. Lin Yi took a deep look at Lu Bienren. Listening to it, this Deputy Pavilion Master Yao and Lu Bienren were actually the same type of people. They didn't have great ambitions, but they both liked to ponder and research on their own. It was no wonder that the two of them got together. After all, birds of a feather flock together. Deputy Pavilion Master Yao has reached the point of being obsessed with arrays. Otherwise, he wouldn't have come all the way from the North Island to the South Continent after seeing such a trial-reward mission. The reason is obvious. It is said that it is an extremely rare array, but I don't know the specifics. Lu Bienren spread his hands helplessly. Lin Yi nodded in agreement. Yao Luanjin, as the Vice Pavilion Lord of Clear Cloud Pavilion, was already a big shot in his own right. His status was not to be underestimated. Chapter 4392. Just asking a few questions and being arrested. Isn't it obvious that they have a guilty conscience? Lin Yi suddenly frowned. Any merchant would open their doors to welcome guests from all over the world. Even if someone came to their door to make trouble, they would still have to be patient. Who would be arrested just for asking for information? It would be strange to say that there was nothing fishy about this. What's more, the Central Chamber of Commerce captured so many people just to do human experiments. No matter how you look at it, such a disregard for human life does not fit with a normal Chamber of Commerce. It's more like a cult. Asterisk, I think so too. The questions I asked at the time were actually very vague, and I didn't mean to target them, but they still acted so sensitive. It can be seen that there must be something fishy behind it. Otherwise, why would they capture me? Lu Bienren said with certainty. Well, but in this case, this Deputy Pavilion Leader Yao, who I have never met before, is probably dead. Maybe he has already been captured by them to do human experiments. Lin Yi could not help but feel worried and regretful. That's not necessarily true. Lu Bienren shook his head and said, Deputy Pavilion Leader Yao is a profound ascending stage master. These people in the Central Chamber of Commerce always only want gold core stage masters to do human experiments. They don't even want nascent soul stage masters, let alone profound ascending stage masters. What? Deputy Pavilion Leader Yao is a profound ascending stage master? Lin Yi was a little surprised. The first time he knew of a profound ascending stage master was when the Will of Heaven fought against Southern Aurora Polaris in Middle Island. At that time, Southern Aurora Polaris could already fight for the position of Middle Island Deputy Island Master with just the strength of the early profound ascending stage. And after that, Lin Yi once again saw the glory of a profound ascending stage master. It was the three giants of Morning Star Academy. The divine nun of East Sea looked at Changketian, a gold core stage master, to death. That kind of shock was really impressive. So subconsciously, Lin Yi always felt that the giants of the profound ascending stage were unattainable, even if he encountered more than one profound ascending stage master in the Central Chamber of Commerce. But he never changed this thought. Yao Luanjin, as the Deputy Pavilion Leader of the Blue Cloud Pavilion in the North Island, had a high status, but compared with the Deputy Island Master of Middle Island, he was still inferior. What's more, he had the same temperament as Lu Bienren. He was completely immersed in the study of arrays, and was not the kind of person who would desperately cultivate to improve his strength. Lin Yi originally thought that his strength should be in the nascent soul realm, and it was very likely that he was at the peak of the nascent soul realm. This matter must be considered in the long run. The Central Chamber of Commerce has many masters, and they are dirty and evil. Once you are caught by them again, you won't be so lucky next time, so you must not act rashly. Lin Yi warned with a stern face. Yeah, I was too rash before, that's why I attracted their attention and fell into their hands. It's all thanks to you, Lin Yi, that I would have died this time. Lu Bienren sighed, feeling the lingering fear. If Lin Yi came a day later, or even just 2 hours later, the ending may be very different. It was very likely that he would have been dragged to do the so-called human experiment by now. Maybe he would have become a corpse. This is called God's will. Senior Brother Lu, you are not destined to die. If you survive a disaster, you will have good fortune later. Linny comforted him with a smile, and then said, but speaking of which, the Central Chamber of Commerce is indeed not easy to mess with. There's something strange about it from top to bottom. There's the secular market, human experiments, mysterious formations, and there's so many experts gathered here. There's even a profound ascending stage giant appearing out of nowhere. With our current strength, we're far from being able to fight them. Senior Brother Liu, what are your plans next? This. Liu Bianren frowned and thought for a moment, then said, as you said, Junior Brother Lin Yi, with my strength, I can't even touch the Central Chamber of Commerce, let alone find Deputy Pavilion Master Yao. So, in order not to cause you trouble, I'd better leave immediately and go back to the North Island first. Although Liu Bianren had a mild temperament, he was never a person who was afraid of trouble, and he would never run away in the face of a battle. It was actually very difficult for him to make this decision. Chapter 43-93. This was an obvious fact. If it were someone else in his position, he might not be able to see it clearly in a short time, let alone accept it calmly. But Liu Bianren was different. He was sincerely thinking for Lin Yi, and he would never stay in the South Continent to do stupid things for the sake of his ridiculous self-esteem, which would implicate Lin Yi. Senior Brother Liu, I'm glad you think so. Hearing this, Lin Yi let out a sigh of relief, and at the same time, he couldn't help but think more highly of Liu Bianren. He was afraid that Liu Bianren would be embarrassed, but he didn't expect Liu Bianren to be so straightforward. He nodded in agreement and said, it's beyond my power now. Just bear it and wait for a good opportunity in the future. Well, Junior Brother, you're right. I'll leave now and go back to the North Island. Liu Bianren made a prompt decision. He knew that every moment he stayed in Devilong City was a moment of risk and hidden danger. Since he had decided to leave, he shouldn't hesitate. It was better to leave before the Central Chamber of Commerce fully reacted. Senior Brother Liu, wait. Linny hurriedly stopped him and said, the power of the Central Chamber of Commerce is beyond our imagination. Once they react, their people will be everywhere. Senior Brother Liu, if you go out like this, you'll be too obvious a target. It's very likely that you won't even be able to get out of the dock, and you'll be walking into a tiger's mouth again. Linny had been wearing the Thousand Silk mask before. Now that he took it off, he was a completely different person, and nothing would happen when he went out. But Liu Bianren was different. He had been locked in the dungeon for so long, and he had just escaped from it. The people of the Central Chamber of Commerce must have some impression of him. As long as the dock was blocked, if Liu Bianren went out like this, he would definitely walk into a trap. Liu Bianren also hesitated. He didn't want to involve Lin Yi or Lin Yi, but he wasn't so fearless that he would take the initiative to die. Otherwise, why would Lin Yi spend so much effort to save him? But if he stayed here, the risk was not small. The risk was also not small. In the eyes of others, the Central Chamber of Commerce was just a newly risen large-scale chamber of commerce. But Liu Bianren and the others who had seen the dark inside stories had a much deeper understanding of the power of the Central Chamber of Commerce than others. If the people from the Central Chamber of Commerce really wanted to chase after him, once they really mobilized a large force, Liu Bianren would be discovered sooner or later if he continued to hide here. There was no room for luck at all. If he left now, there was a high chance that he would be stuck at the dock. However, it was also possible that someone would come knocking on his door. For a moment, Liu Bianren was caught in a dilemma. Just as they were in a dilemma, there was a sudden knock on the door. Lin Yi and Liu Bianren couldn't help but be startled at the same time. The first thought that popped into their minds was that the people from the Central Chamber of Commerce had caught up so quickly. Who? Lin Yi gave Liu Bianren a wink, signaling him to hide in his room, and asked in a deep voice, Brother Ling, it was me. Qi Wenhan's voice came from outside the door. Lin Yi let out a sigh of relief. He went to open the door and let Qi Wenhan in. Aya, Brother Ling, I finally found you. Why did you leave by yourself first? I thought you had suddenly disappeared, making me worry for nothing. Qi Wenhan was in a hurry, both surprised and complaining. Previously, on the second floor of the Central Chamber of Commerce, He had just asked a few words with the shop assistant, and when he turned his head, Linny had disappeared. At that time, his first reaction was that Linny had gone up to the third floor. He wanted to chase after Lin E, but was stopped by the shop assistant, who said that the third floor was a private area and was not open to people outside of the Central Chamber of Commerce. At that time, Chi Wenhan didn't think much of it. Since the third floor was not open to the public, Lin E must have gone back to the first floor. After all, the goods on the first floor were much more interesting, and it was more interesting just to look at them. However, when Chi Wenhan went down to the first floor and walked around, he still couldn't find Lin E. Even when he left the Central Chamber of Commerce and walked around the main street of Emolong City, he still couldn't find Lin E. Later, when he returned to the inn, there was still no trace of Lin E. This time, Chi Wenhan was really anxious. For the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency, Lin E was not only a great benefactor, but also an honorary escort leader. More importantly, in the upcoming South Continent Escort Agency Grand Event, they were counting on Lin E to help the agency fight for a good ranking. How could he suddenly disappear? If Lin E just went out to play, it would be fine. As long as nothing happened to him, everything would be fine. However, the problem was that although this Emolong City seemed to be much more orderly than Wayark City, it was still the South Continent Sea after all, and the nature of chaos could not be changed. If a stranger like Lin E appeared here, he might be targeted by some local bully. No matter how strong Lin E was, he was only one person. Moreover, he was not at the level of a mysterious ascending stage giant who could easily suppress an area. Once he was surrounded by people, he would be at a great disadvantage. If something were to happen to Lin E here, then he, Chi Wenhan, wouldn't be able to absolve himself of the blame even if he died 10,000 times. He probably wouldn't even be able to keep his position as the young master anymore. After all, he was the one who first suggested going out to play. If something were to happen to Lin E because of this, then he would become the biggest sinner of the entire Equal Heaven Escort Agency. In just a short period of 4 to 6 hours, the news of Lin Yi's disappearance had already spread throughout the agency. Even Housekeeper Song was preparing to arrange for everyone to go out and search for him. The only thing left was to call Chi Mingyuan, the head escort leader, back. As for Chi Wenhan, he was frantically searching everywhere. He had walked the road between the Central Chamber of Commerce and the inn at least 7 or 8 times. He was really anxious. If he still could not find Lin E, he could not wait to find Chi Mingyuan to apologize. Fortunately, he had just heard from the waiter that someone had returned from Lin Yi's room. That was why he hurried over to check on the situation. When he saw that Lin Yi was standing there safe and sound, he immediately let out a sigh of relief. His whole body felt deflated. "I'm sorry to have made you worry, Brother Chi." Lin Yi saw how worried Chi Wenhan was, and felt a little touched. It had happened so suddenly that he couldn't help it, but he still felt a little bad about it. "I saw that you were really engrossed, so I went downstairs myself. I didn't think that I'd run into someone I knew, so I left after a few words. I'm really sorry." The reason why Lin Yi did not tell the truth was mainly because he did not want to drag the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency into this. The Central Chamber of Commerce's power was too great. A mere Heaven's Equal Escort Agency was not a match at all, and would only be caught in the crossfire. Hey, what's wrong with that? Of course, old friends should chat a little longer when they meet. Chi Wenhan waved his hand indifferently and said magnanimously, "It's good that you're fine. I was just worried that Brother Ling would run into Cheng Haonan and the others from the Poison Eye Mercenary Band. They might come looking for trouble with you. After all, 2 fists are no match for 4 hands." The School Bell's personal expert tribe is currently holding a study day activity. Everyone, hurry up and participate. The previous chapter about the Academy's 3 heads being at the beginning of the mountain was a mistake. Recently, I've been leaving at 5 in the morning to run errands and only returning in the afternoon. It's inevitable that I'll make mistakes when I'm exhausted. Chapter 4394. Haha, that's not true. Lin Yi smiled nonchalantly. Compared to the huge threat of the Central Chamber of Commerce, the Poison Eye Mercenary Group was child's play. Lin Yi didn't take them seriously at all. That's good, that's good. Chi Wenhan nodded repeatedly. After being nervous for so long, he finally relaxed. "Oh right, Brother Chi. I want to trouble you to do me a favor." Linny suddenly made a request with a serious expression. "Brother Ling, don't be like this. We're on the same side. Why would I trouble you? If you need anything, just tell me. I'll go through fire and water to get it done for you." Chi Wenhan patted his chest and said, "I want to use the Equal of Heaven escort agency's channels to secretly escort someone back to Weiwan City, then go back to the North Island. Is that okay?" Linny asked. "Secretly escort someone?" Chi Wenhan was stunned, then nodded without hesitation and said, "Of course, that's not a problem. Our Equal of Heaven escort agency does this. It's not a problem to escort someone. But Brother Ling, who is this person?" "Senior Brother Lu, come out." Linny smiled and called Lu Bianren out from the inner room. He introduced the two of them and said, "This is my senior brother Lu Bianren from the Blue Cloud Pavilion in the North Island. This is the young master of the Equal of Heaven escort agency, Chi Wenhan." "Nice to meet you." Lu Bianren and Chi Wenhan saluted each other at the same time. "Brother Ling, is this Brother Lu the acquaintance you met at the Central Chamber of Commerce? Previously, our escort agency couldn't find it no matter how hard we tried, but in the end, the two of you ran into it. How can there be such a coincidence in this world?" Chi Wenhan looked Lu Bianren up and down with a look of realization. Like Wu Baoyang, Lu Bianren was the target that Lin Yi asked them to find. "Haha, it's really a coincidence." Linny smiled and said, "Senior Brother Lu came to the South Island to carry out a mission a few months ago. Because of some unforeseen circumstances, he has been staying here. The brothers in the North Island are all worried about him. That's why I want to ask Brother Chi to use the security agency's channels to send Senior Brother Lu back as soon as possible." Well said, well said. Brother Ling's business is the business of the escort agency. It's just delivering a person. There's no need to ask for anything. Brother Ling, you're treating me like an outsider. Chi Wenhan laughed heartily. In fact, with his shrewdness, he could more or less guess that there must be some hidden story behind this. It was just that it was inconvenient for Lin Yi to talk about it in detail. Otherwise, there would be no need to deliberately mention a secret escort. However, he would not pursue the matter further. After all, everyone had their own things to do. If he made things difficult for Lin Yi and the others because of him asking too many questions, then he could only slap himself in the face. In the escort agency business, one should only ask questions that should be asked, and absolutely not ask questions that should not be asked. This was the most basic rule. Otherwise, not only would they offend the client, they might even invite a disaster for no reason. As the young master of the Heaven's Equal escort agency, Chi Wenhan was very clear about this point. "Then, I'll leave Senior Brother Lu to Brother Chi." Lin Yi did not bother with pleasantries. He turned his head and said to Lu Bianren, "Senior Brother Lu, I still have things to do here in the South Continent. I won't go back with you for now. Tell Senior Brother Ku and the others good news for me, so they don't have to worry about me." "Yes, Junior Brother, you have to be more careful. Although there's an old saying that the skilled are bold, the other party is really not to be underestimated. You must not act rashly when you're alone. It's best to go back and report this matter to the higher-ups, and then think about it at length," Lu Bianren warned with some worry. Due to Chi Wenhan's presence, he could not directly point out the Central Chamber of Commerce. However, Lin Yi naturally understood what he meant. With the terrifying strength displayed by the Central Chamber of Commerce, it was impossible to shake it with just the strength of a few people. Only by mobilizing the entire 3 pavilions of the North Island could they barely have the confidence to contend with it. "Senior Brother Lu, don't worry, I know what to do." Lin Yi nodded. Although he often fought with his life on the line, he was not a person who liked to fight. It was fine if he did not know before. But now that he knew that the Central Chamber of Commerce was full of masters, and he could easily meet a mysterious ascending stage giant, why would Lin Yi rashly provoke them again? He was not stupid. "That's good. Let's meet again in the North Island." Lu Bianren cupped his hands and said goodbye to Lin Yi. "Okay, let's meet again in the North Island. There's no time to lose." "Brother Chi, arrange for Senior Brother Lu to leave now," Lin Yi said immediately. "Okay. Brother Lu, come with me." Qi Wenhan immediately brought Lu Bianren out. As one of the 5 largest escort agencies in the South Continent, the Equal of Heaven Escort Agency naturally had its own specialized logistics channels. Secretly escorting a person out was a simple matter, and no one from any faction would be able to detect it. After sending Lu Bianren away, Lin Yi finally had one less thing to worry about. This was the main purpose of his trip to the South Continent. As for hunting down Wu Baoyang, it was just a secondary matter. In the next few days, Lin Yi stayed in his room and did not go out. The only thing he did every day was to meditate and cultivate.